and we're going to start our Putnam County Board of County Commissioners workshop on December 8th. The invocation will be led by Commissioner Rawls and the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Adamsack. All rise if you are able.
Heavenly gracious Father, Lord, we thank you so much for this day that you've given us, Lord, and for the season that you've given us. And we just ask that you keep us mindful as we go through our busy schedule to keep others in mind, Lord. Just ask that you help us deliberate what's best for our citizens today, Lord. Just bless everybody on this commission, their families. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Rawls. Commissioner Adamsack, thank you very much. We're going to go to public comment. This portion of the agenda is designed to allow citizens an opportunity to bring matters to the attention of the board. It is not reasonable to expect the board will engage in debate or deliberation about matters in which the board has received no prior information as part of the agenda. Please try to limit your conversations to 3 minutes. I do have a card here, but Ms. Sessions, do you want to wait till we get to that topic at that point? Would you like to wait till we get to that topic at that point? Okay, thank you. And Mr. Hotelin? Mr. Tim Hotelin?
Yes, sir.
You're up for public comment.
Good day. Tim Hotelling, live in San Mateo, as you know, been here before. The last workshop, I brought forth a document with some recommendations and observations about means of improving, hopefully, employee management. I thought it was going to be on this agenda, but I didn't see it, so I took the initiative of putting together a couple of handouts for you all. One of the recommendations, because the ombudsman resolution or ordinance, pardon me, that was put together where employees and or outsiders had complaints, they could take it up through the deputy administrator to the administrator, and it hasn't seemed to work quite as well as it should have. I hear some things and calls and complaints of that allow me to understand that some of the reasons that we're losing employees is not the standard, I can get more money in Flagler County. There's a lot of other reasons. And assuming that our management wants to know those reasons, the best way to do that is to ask. I've given you a handout that I found on the internet from the Office of the Financial Management for the state of Washington that pretty well details the values and the virtues of asking employees why they want to leave. Whether it's internal or external, promotion, got health issues, just tired of it, or if there's something that management has an ability to control and change. I also have one that's that I obtained from a large international company that's entitled Exit Interview Form. And that one is each and every employee, as part of their checkout basis, has to complete it. And I would encourage you to, with an open mind, take a look and realize these are methods of extracting opportunity for better management, better efficiency. Sometimes you can make great strides forward. And there are questions that probably really smart people put together, and there's quite a few other things on the internet also, but I would encourage that because I personally don't believe that we have a real understanding as to why we've lost people with anywhere from 5 to 15 to 34 years of experience because they became unhappy, and maybe we can make keep some of the ones we have.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tell.
That good enough?
That's fine.
Anybody?
Okay, yes,
If I may,
yes, you may. Commissioner Rawls.
Sir?
print this,
I went up to Staples and
nice paper. But no, I agree with you. And
Microphone.
thank you. I agree with you. I think that it's very important that we communicate with our employees as they're leaving to find out what we can do better. You know, some people leaving in unfavorable conditions, but might still have information that we can use to make this a better workplace.
sometimes disgruntled employees have legitimate reasons for disgruntlement.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tell.
Thank you.
Mr. Adams, that?
Tim, the one thing I do kind of disagree with you on, in that I'm all for having an exit interview thing. This document's pretty long, but to have it mandated is nearly impossible, right? It would have to be at the option of the person leaving. So if we do ever consider something like that, we do have to take that into account. A person has the right to either say their piece or not when they leave.
I agree. Thank you. All right, anybody else in the public would like to speak that did not fill out a card of any topic that's not on the agenda? Thank you. I'm sorry, I should have said that earlier. Okay. I kind of could tell. Okay. All right, then we'll close this section of our public comment, and we're going to go to Port Authority Workshop. Is there any comments on Port Authority items only at this point? All right, seeing none, we'll close that section of public comment. Commissioners, in a general discussion on Port Authority items? Okay, and now we're going to adjourn the Port Authority Workshop and go back to the Board of County Commissioner Workshop. And the first item of business today is item A, our Administration CARES Act update backup document. Mr. Suggs, are you taking that?
No, sir, Mr. Chairman. This will be Deputy County Administrator, Ms. Julianne Young.
Okay. Ms. Young, you coming to the podium, or are you going to sit there?
What would you prefer, sir?
Whatever you prefer.
I'm kind of comfy, if that's okay with everybody. Good afternoon. We're here just for a brief CARES Act update. As all of you know, CARES Act has been a whirlwind and a tight timeline, and that timeline changes every time FDEM changes the ballgame. So most recently, we were contacted the week of Thanksgiving and told our final request for Phase 3 had to all be submitted by the 3rd at 5 p.m. So what you see in the backup documentation that was given to you, and this won't make sense for you all, but it's the same.
Julianne, we don't have anything given to us.
It was sent out in an addendum.
I placed it in your inbox.
See my comment?
Hold on just a minute. Maybe we can, are they?
Yeah, I don't have it.
I think it was in your mailbox.
When did you put it in the mailbox, Sarah?
I think yesterday.
Friday.
Oh.
All right, we're going to recess for 3 minutes while we wait for that. How's that sound?
Sorry about that,
That's
Commissioner.
okay. That's okay. You're back up again.
Okay.
Thank you.
I understand you all just got it, but I promise we can walk through it together and answer any questions. The long and the short of it is, if you'll remember correctly, Phase 1 and Phase 2 were given to us in advance of spending the funds, and then we still are going through the reconciliation process of final reconciliations for those. And then for Phase 3 funding, that's on a reimbursement basis only. So you spend it, you validate it with FDEM, and then they give it back to you. The Phase 3 request allocations, even for expenditures not spent, the deadline to put them into the system was the 3rd. And if you did not, they scooped your funds as a county and they're gonna keep them. So we, as a county, worked with our state-assigned FDEM liaison to make sure we submitted allocation requests far exceeding our actual amount of money that Putnam County has been allocated. So we're allocated 12.9. We submitted somewhere around 16.1 in allocation requests to be certain that at the end of the day, no matter what ebbs and flows as far as where FDEM funds, we still stand our best chance of receiving our full 100% CARES Act allocation reimbursement. Now, when those funds come back to us, they come back to us for you all to do with it what you desire to do with it. This is how we are reimbursing it. So if you follow along with a few items, some of the things, we had ours kind of broken up into categories for both the commission as well as staff to make sure we could manage it. And in our first was county-sponsored programs. Of your business and nonprofits, we are estimating we're gonna be at 100% of those allocated funds. For your individual assistance program, it's estimated at this time we're gonna come in under budget simply because we don't have enough applicants who can supply the necessary documents to prove the impact by COVID and to valid expenditures that we could help assist them with. So we're if we estimate liberally, we're gonna spend about 2.1 million of that. If we estimate more realistically, we're gonna spend about 1.6 million of that 2.5 original allocation set aside, which then of course also proportionately changes our United Way allocation and expenditure and request back to us, okay? So I'm just trying to go down it by groups. Internal county administration, at the recommendation and advice of the FDEM liaison, we went ahead and submitted an allocation request for our public safety personnel. This is what all counties are using as an administrative convenience and contingency plan, and so we too did that. You'll see some other items. When you submit into the FDEM system, you can't categorize it as we had, i.e. we had a big lump sum for EMS medical supplies. You're not allowed to do that. You have to do it by expenditure. So essentially what you see in that second spreadsheet in that second column, which is projected and additional request, that's actual. So at this time, as far as staff leave, those are actual numbers, as well as if you scroll on down, it's still into the internal departments, you'll start seeing some itemized tangible expenses that we were able to submit requests for. Moving on down to the constitutional offices, there's only one, well, there were 2 constitutional officers that still had requests pending after we did the year-end wrap-up, and that will be the Supervisor of Elections Office. They're still putting together their items. However, even putting it together, they're gonna come in under what they originally allocated. So there's overage there. The Sheriff's Office as well, they were able to work diligently with FEMA and to get some of their expenses covered in other manners. So they didn't need to take from the county as much as they originally projected. The Clerk of Court's numbers appear that they're over their original allocation, but that's actually because they purchased the court administrator's temperature kiosks. And so if you put those 2 categories together, again, those 2 groups are under their original allocation. So again, we're under that amount of money. If you move down to your municipal partners, even the city of Palatka, their expenses came in under what was originally projected. The town of Interlochen is one that I'm going to ask the commission to look at in just a moment, but we can talk through it. Of their initial request, they were requesting $1,100, and only $789 of that was actually eligible under CARES because the other ones fell outside of the dates that were eligible. They did have 2 supplemental requests, and again, later in the meeting, we can discuss at this time if this is something you'd like to go back and allow them to claim at this time. And then, of course, we had DOH Putnam came and make a presentation, and they were requesting $15,000 for PPE and $52,000 for staffing the test site. And then we had the ARC of Putnam, who has, they were the nonprofit requesting above and beyond. And this is kind of the point where we need to talk about them, as well as Epicure and Bread of Life. So a couple of notes on these others. This was sent out to you on Friday. On Monday morning, the Department of Health came back to me and notified me they're not going to be providing a single dollar worth of claimed expenditures. And so that entire $67,000 originally allocated to the Department of Health is now freed up. And this is exactly why we put in allocations over and above just our straight $13 million, because though we didn't know on Thursday the Department of Health was going to come back to us and say we can't claim any of these, it has happened. And we would be in a situation if we didn't over request, then we would be losing funds for Putnam. And that's what we wanted to make sure didn't happen. So that $67,000 is freed up. The ARC of Putnam, their request appears to be legitimate and valid and completely CARES eligible at this time. So it becomes a question of the will of the commission. For Epicure and Bread of Life, we have been working diligently with them since our last meeting with you all. And it has, at this time, we have not come to a eligible reimbursement reasoning with either of them. Not saying we couldn't pull it off, but we've made multiple attempts at it. Epicure's complication is that their food is all donated. So the food is free, and that's really what CARES would pay for. CARES would pay for the actual food or the supplies to distribute the food. Their expenses are capital in nature, things that weren't caused by COVID and aren't gonna end by COVID, if that makes sense. A roof, a freezer, those types of things. Well, we can't draw the nexus at this time. So I'm not saying we absolutely couldn't with additional work if the board desires us to go back and attempt, but we brought it to the initial workshop. We've talked to our CARES consultant. Whit O'Brien is willing to meet one-on-one with them and see if we can help find a better narrative. But we're down to the wire at this point. So we're kind of needing some decisions on the town of Interlochen, the ARC, the Bread of Life, Epicure, and then also for board consideration, just so that you have everything that I need. Every time I submit one of the reimbursement ones that goes through and is ready to be funded, I need a authorized signature for the funds to be released. So I need the board to authorize whomever they'd like to sign off on that request for advancement. That's all I need.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rawls was first. Mr. Rawls?
All right, so, Joanne, you said that if we didn't over-ask, we would be losing funds.
You will.
So I wrote the question, why? Why would we be losing funds? Let me preface it by saying that we budgeted last year to fully staff the county. And if you're saying that we went above and beyond that budget, I can understand that, but we weren't working as many people. We were taking people out of fully funded positions and transferring them over to EOC to work. So my question is why would we take that money from the CARES Act funding and not give it to the public? Why not reach back out to the business community over the next 30 days and say, look, we have this money left over. We were already funded as a government. Because this, and I guess what I really struggle with trying to understand here is the money was given to us to give to our public, not to use for ourselves. $5 million for us versus $3 million for business and $3 million for nonprofit and very little for individuals. But why should we keep that? Why should we not push that money out since the public has already funded these positions and already funded everything? We didn't have to pay the overtime. We could have let people go home a little bit earlier. We didn't have to have administrators and senior people taking overtime. They could have just worked a regular 8 or 10 hour day, but they chose to do that. We didn't have to spend all the money on the food that we spent. So I personally think that this is a huge grab by government, and this is what really infuriates the public lately, is seeing misuse of money like this. This was public money, not money for us to spend ourselves, for us to spend on the public, to the public, and we still have businesses that are hurting, even with the 10,000 we gave them.
Can I clarify some of that? Because I think we're getting lost in translation. So let me help just a little bit. First off, let's clear it up. There is zero food claimed in CARES Act dollars, none from the county. Now, your constitutionals have, but that's in their constitutional request, has nothing to do with us. Wait a minute.
Well, you gave me a report that showed almost $30,000 of food.
Of projected costs, yes,
No,
sir.
no, these are hard costs. They were spent.
Chairman,
Not of
Okay.
CARES Act dollars.
Mr. Ross,
it seems to me that
let
he's
her-
gonna argue with staff.
let Ms. Young talk.
This is all that's being claimed for CARES Act dollars.
Okay.
This is your CARES Act dollars. There's not a dime of food in there for the BOCC. Now, time out. What you asked me
Time out.
is, why would we take something given to us? It's not been given to us yet. It's been allocated to us. My overage is to make sure you do get the funds. What you do with them once we get them in-house, that's completely up to you.
How are we claiming the overage is my question. We were fully funded. How can we have an overage?
Overage in your CARES Act. So you were originally allocated $12.9 million to spend. You went through your spend plan and allocated it out. What we've done on your behalf, or on the county's behalf, is made sure we have request allocations above and beyond that 12.9. Because what has happened, we expect to happen, and anybody with reason and logic can. Our individual assistance program is going to come up short for the time period for which we can claim the reimbursement. So if we don't have the overage, then you have an underage, under amount allocation. So you would either lose that difference of what you allocated, or now that we have an over request, your overage can make you whole again. What you do with that funds once it's made whole, that's not a staff decision, that's a BOCC decision.
But I'm looking at a line item here that says, personal overage and wages. I'm having a hard time seeing, it looks like $1.8 million.
Correct, that's your EMS only. That is fire EMS overtime wages. All we're doing with that line item, sir, is making sure the county can get the money for CARES.
So-
What you do with it when it comes in is up to you.
So we budget for fire and EMS overtime anyways.
Yes,
It's been a problem for us for quite a while. This is nothing new, and it was budgeted for.
yes.
So I'm just, again, this is an opportunity where we have about 30 days left, actually less than that, we could push more money out to the business community, the businesses that were eligible, that are still hurting or needing extra funds, and float the money out to them, instead of saying, well, we gave you $3 million and we held like $5 million for ourselves.
You can't meet the Treasury's timeline to give businesses more money and claim it with the Treasury. You can
I don't know if
claim,
it can or not. I don't know if it can or not.
but I'm telling you,
We already have businesses that are qualified that have already received $10,000.
yes, you
And
do.
if they came up and said, hey, I appreciate the 10,000, but another 10,000 would really help us because we're this far along now, 8 months later, and we're still suffering.
Staff and your consultant would be very cautious about going beyond that 10,000, because we get into where the Treasury wants to audit how you spent that 20. And many of your businesses have already told us they can't go through that. So it's a situation where you have two pieces of the puzzle. Piece A is how you get your money from the Treasury, and making sure that the way you get your money is a qualified and eligible plan. That's what we've laid out for you. When all of those dollars come in, however the board spends them is completely up to the board. So if at that point you wanted to give more money to a business with that pot of money, you can do whatever you want to with it. The board can do whatever.
My concern is, and this comes from a conversation with Mr. Suggs, where he said, I think I know how we can fund the communications tower, the communication system. And it was with CARES Act money. So I just want to make sure that we're not going to do an end round and then do that, because that really would be offensive to the public. That's all I'm saying.
And I can rest assured, Mr. Chairman, that any decision on any dollars that are recouped from the CARES Act funding would come back to the Board of County Commissioners for your final approval. The county administrator does not have the authority to spend that type of money.
And you're right, we'd make that decision as a whole.
That's where the concern comes from.
Mr. Rawls, are you done?
Thank you. Yes, I am.
Mr. Turner?
Mr. Chairman, I think we're gonna sit here, if we talk about what we believe to be what the CARES Act funding was given for, I think we could spend a week talking about it, and none of us are gonna waste the commission's time by telling you what my opinion is of whether or not that I think we should or shouldn't take CARES Act money or whatever. I think we need to try to bring this in for a landing, and the only way I know how is take it issue by issue from Ms. Young and vote that up or down or on who it is or how we're gonna handle it. And one last question, if I may, Mr. Chairman. The allocation, the original allocation monies, which is the CARE monies, then you added additional allocation for the ones that, to take care of things like the health department decided they didn't want theirs or what, or couldn't take it or whatever.
Correct.
So is there enough money left in the original allocation minus the additional, or with the additional allocations to fund some of these ones that we haven't funded yet? Or are they included in the original 13 allegation? I know that was probably confusing.
I may have lost you, but if it's on this sheet of paper, I've put an earmark with FDEM so that we could fund it, i.e. the Arc of Putnam. It's earmarked with FDEM, we could fund it. If we're talking about businesses who may be in our queue and may not hit our cutoff, we could not fund it because FDEM knows that our project maximum is $6 million. And once we hit that, we don't have another way to increase that particular program.
Okay, I think you did lose me.
Okay, sorry.
Any of the additional requests for funding that we're gonna talk about shortly,
If you're gonna talk, if it's on this sheet, then yes.
is that in the tranche of 13
Yes.
million?
Well,
Or is it included in the additional? Because if we spend the 13 million, then we'd be giving the donations to these other nonprofits out of the county's money, not out of the CARES Act money. That's the reason why I'm asking is the additional money requested in the original $13 million, or is it in the additional money that we put in there to make sure we didn't have to send any back?
The 4 million.
Right.
so the answer is muddy. It's not clear. So the original 13 million had an allocation, and let's use it because it's easy, for the Department of Health to have 67. What we're talking about today is a modified, but still within that 13 million, if that makes sense. So it wouldn't be county dollars. It would still be, so you have almost 209 from the constitutionals that was originally allocated that is not needed. You have another 67 from the others that was originally allocated and not needed. And so if we take a look at Interlochen and DOH, and Epicure and the ARC, and if we're saying, you know, we're not going to take from the county's allocation, then, or the county budget, you're still within that base funding level because those other programs or other entities came in under what they originally needed.
Gotcha.
Did that make sense, Commissioner?
Well, like you said, it's still muddy to me, and I understand that you're trying your best to explain it to where I can understand it, where it's clear to you. But, so what you're saying is that if we gave money to some of these others, it would be out of funds that were additionally allocated up and above the 13 million, but it would come out of money that would, less of it would go to the county for reimbursement of expenses, and that's where we take the additional monies from? Is that close to accurate?
Let me do it this way, maybe. So if we only look at the constitutionals and the municipal partners, the original allocation for them was $1.65 million. That's in the original 13. If we modify it to what the constitutionals actually needed, plus what the municipalities needed, including the additional request of the town of Interlochen, because some came in under their projection and some came in over, you're only at 1.4 million. So we originally had those categories at 1.6. Even if we took the overages of the town of Interlochen If you're looking at just those two categories, you're still at 1.4 million. Did that help any?
Yeah. But I guess it's still not clear, and I know you're trying, so
I am.
please excuse me for.
No problem.
I'm still not clear. We got $13 million. CARES Act money, 12.9 or whatever it is, but say 13. Out of that $13 million, do we have in each category an amount of money that we have left that, to allocate that would keep us within the 13? I mean, now that you have some updated numbers, such as if you could take whatever section you want. We gave them an allocation under each one of these sections originally.
Yes, sir.
And if we have money left over within that section and are still within the $13 million, because unless I'm mistaken, we can't take money that's been given to us from one section and use it to pay off or collect from another section,
You
because we
can't
didn't
this time.
allocate that, right?
No, you can't at this time, because what they've done with the last phase of funding is originally that's what we were told, but now with the last phase of funding, it has to be specific to the expenditure and the purchase. So, i.e., when we talk about the additional request of the supervisor of elections, I didn't get to categorize that in constitutionals. I had to categorize that by supervisor of elections, X dollars. Same thing with the city of Palatka. And now they're all itemized, and they're taken, this whole page at this point essentially is taken individually, and you can plug and play them as long as you don't go over in one particular allocation line item. So if I had the supervisor of elections for 19,000, I couldn't go back in and say the supervisor of elections has 50,000. But I could go in and say the supervisor of elections has 18,000 and the clerk has 10 if their original allocation was 12. Is that, if they're
Yeah,
in
so
the
basically
system?
what you're saying is we still have to stay within the general category, but not specifically within the line item on the request. So on
Well, at this point, your categories are no more. Your categories are one big pot of $13 million, $12.9.
and so out of that, we have over allocated by $4 million.
To make sure,
I understand.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
out of the $4 million we over allocated, how much do you think, with the information to date instead of last week, how much money do you think that we have that we're over the 13 million? And the reason I ask that is because if we spend more money, then we'll be taking the money out of reserves
That's right.
to pay for this money.
hang on just a second for me.
And I'm gonna make one more statement while you're looking for my answer there, Ms. Young, but
Yes, sir.
as far as the $10,000 goes, gentlemen, there's gonna be a reckoning one day about this money. It's not, when you get to a certain point, somebody's gonna be audited. I don't know how it's gonna, in my opinion, I don't know how it's gonna come, but I feel like I looked at all the names of the people that received $10,000. There were names, and I'm certainly not gonna call any out, but there were names on that list that I think would have a very difficult time justifying that they had a COVID-related incident that would have netted them $10,000 in the CARES Act funding, and that's what had to be put in there. I was told, some of them I don't even know the names of, but I was told by some of the people that were reviewing these applications that some of them got more money in the CARES Act than they made in all of last year. So I think they're gonna have a hard time justifying $10,000 in CARES Act related expenses, which in COVID related expenses that would qualify for the CARES Act. So my biggest concern still remains to this day, that if you go to a small business, without calling anybody out, you go to a small business and you inject $10,000, but that $10,000 comes with strings. It's not just, here's 10,000, go buy you a car. It comes with strings. And those strings are that you actually have to have COVID-related expenses to that amount of money. If at some point they decide to audit, and they don't do just a broad sampling audit, but decide to audit everybody, even as a very simple audit on their $10,000, if they can't prove those COVID-related expenses that they attested to during this process, and we go to them and we say, okay, you can only justify 4,000 out of your 10,000, right? You've got to write us a check for $6,000. I believe in most cases they're not going to be able to do that. So I understand where Commissioner Rawls is coming from, that we have this money in there built in for certain expenses that we had budgeted anyhow, but there are expenses that are allowed to be paid for by CARES Act, and I think at some point there's going to be a reckoning, and the county is going to be on the line for a big portion, possibly, of this $13 million, because the small businesses that were granted the $10,000 and then can't prove COVID-related expenses and don't have the money to pay it back, the county is on the line. That was said from day one, that the county is on the line for these funds. So I think we need to be cognizant of that fact while we're going through this discussion. There's still a reckoning coming, possibly one day, when the county's going to have to pay money. So, do you have,
Okay, I
do
think
you have that?
Yes, sir. I think I
answer?
can answer the question, and I think where you're headed. So the additional requests between the town of Interlochen and the ARC, Epicure, and the Bread of Life, if they all came to fruition at 100% of their new request, it's $176,000. What of the original allocation budget of the 12.9, just what we know today, you're going to save from the constitutional offices that were under, the municipalities that were under their original, and now knowing that the Department of Health is not going to have any expenditures to claim, that's 276. That's not even accounting for the fact that we're very confident the individual assistance program is going to come in under significantly. So if you never even look at the county portion of the allocation, you theoretically could fund these 5 over requests with just the overages in those other categories.
Okay, so one last question, if I may,
Sure,
Mr.
you
Chairman.
may. You have the floor.
If we, with the original $13 million, or 12.9,
Yep.
we're all calling it 13, but with the original allocation of money, would didn't you say that these other programs as of yet did not fit into that original money because of the request made was like for a new freezer or for a new something that COVID had nothing to do with whatsoever? Paying the rent on the building or a certain building or what have you that was a commercial building, and they've already received $10,000 towards that rent, for instance. So how could we justify, and boy, I hate to be that guy, Epicure and Bread of Life and all them, even though I'm staunch supporters of them, how do we do it if they don't fit the criteria that we have to give the money to them?
Well, I think the request would be, of the 5 additional, we have 2 from the town of Interlochen, 1 from the ARC, and then 1 from Epicure and Bread of Life. The first 3, the town of Interlochen both request, as well as the ARC, has already been deemed embedded and eligible. So it's just a matter of getting the backup documentation to FDEM. As far as the other 2, if the board desires to try to fund them, what staff would do is reach out to them and get one final last proposal and send it to FDEM. And if FDEM approved, then we would pay out at the rate FDEM approved. And if FDEM doesn't approve, then staff would not pay out at all to Epicure. So what we would ask the board to do is say, okay, we're gonna leave the allocation, we're gonna let Epicure and Bread of Life take their best chance, because we'd love to help them feed the people if we can with these funds. But then if FDEM comes back and says this does not meet eligibility, then they would not receive anything from the county, would be my recommendation.
Okay, well, I'll talk about that again later after the other commissioners decide. Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir. Mr. Adamczak.
So we're gonna go through those 4 line by line after this, or is now
Those
the
5, yes, sir.
So up until 21 days ago, I was a private citizen. I wasn't elected to this position. I hadn't taken a seat. I've been offended by the handling of the CARES Act, this particular item by the board, since February when it first came out and was talked about. The focus, I think, should have been the people first. We live in Putnam County. We don't live in some rich county like St. John's or something else that had their plans together a lot quicker than we did and had some idea on how they were going to contact people and reach out to the public. We have a lot of people that are still hurting, that aren't even aware that this CARES Act stuff exists, how to apply for it. In this county, that's a miss on our part as a board. That's all I want to say about that part of it. As far as the part with Epicure and stuff, I think there's ways, and we'll discuss it then, that you can justify it just like you're justifying thermometers and stuff, right? They're used for the fact that COVID happened, but it's not like we throw them out after COVID occurs, right? So the reason why they bought freezers, and I volunteered at one of those several times, the reason they bought the freezers is to hold the food that they were given. So that was a need because of COVID, because they didn't have that number of people coming in the line until COVID. So that was to fulfill the need of basically keeping the foods basically secure and fresh and good. The roof, the same thing. We couldn't work in volunteers underneath a roof that leaked or was unsafe. The bathrooms actually needed some work too that were done. We couldn't have there without toilets and there was 40 to 50 volunteers there the 2 times I was there. All that I think is just as valid as saying we bought thermometers that aren't gonna get thrown out afterwards. They did those things on that accelerated timetable because of COVID, not otherwise. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Adamczak. Mr. Rawls?
So in the information that's been sent out by finance, it looks like there's large tranches or numerous tranches of $10,000 allocations that are not labeled with any recipients. Do you know how many of those are by any chance?
We have a reconciliation in Salesforce. If they're $10,000, then they have to be a business or nonprofit. So if you'll show me the report that finance, I'd have to get with Susan Frank and find out why the information's not in the field.
If you look at the reports that are sent out to the commission, I'm assuming you guys are getting them, it'll show a company name and it'll show the amount, but then when you get toward the bottom, it'll just show the next number and then $10,000, and it's blank where the name goes. And it does this repeatedly 20 or 30 times. So I'm assuming that we're hedging our bets. I wrote down placeholders, you know.
No, they're not placeholders. Those are actual checks, but I'd have to get with Ms. Frank and find out what happened when she cut the check. That's a function of the finance office.
So
Those are actual checks that went out.
well, okay, because they don't show any business names.
I'll find out why from Ms. Frank.
Okay.
Mr. Turner?
Oh, yes, I just wanted to have a comment for Mr. Adamczak, and I'm not trying to be combative or anything whatsoever. But the reason that the funding went to St. John's and Duval and all of them is the people that had 500,000 more citizens got their money months ahead of us, months.
Okay, so Clay then.
Excuse me?
Clay County had a plan before we did, using the same people we used.
I
I mean,
understand.
I could go through a
Mr.
list. There
Mr.
was about
Adamczak.
Okay,
5
well,
of them.
Okay,
Not
hang on.
just the
We're not going to debate like that.
Okay, and that's fine, but just the point is that the larger counties with 500,000 or more got their money quite a bit ahead of us.
It was 12 counties in Florida.
Right, yeah.
Got it.
So I apologize, I referenced one of the 12, but there was others.
Mr. Adamczak,
Of that.
are you done, Mr. Turner?
Yes, sir. thank
Mr. Adamczak, you have the floor.
So I apologize if I use St. John's as the example, because they were part of that 12, but there were several other small counties that weren't part of that 12 that were way ahead of us in the schedule. Thank you.
Okay, I need to address that because they were ahead of us, but we were all trying to figure this out at the same time. And just because they had a plan didn't mean they operated it. Believe me, I was in the trenches and a lot of us were. I want to make one more statement before I turn over to Mr. Pickens. They will be getting 1099s, these businesses are. So you've got to know there's going to be a day of reckoning coming. If you're going to get a 1099, you're going to file that with your taxes. Someone's going to look at that down the road. Mr. Pickens, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, and I think you and Commissioner Turner said that, they got their money first with the larger counties, no question. And just, like you said, just because somebody had a plan doesn't mean that it worked any better than the one we had. And nobody's ever done this before, so I think we did, a fairly good job, implementing this and then rolling out more money as Commissioner Rawls was pushing forward. Definitely is to go from the 3 to the 5 to the 10 that we went to. And also, I see where you were coming from with those lists of the checks, but I think they were just in smaller letters, and you could still see the businesses there, I'm pretty sure, on the rollout. Because some of them were really bold, and then they'd have, but I think it is in there.
All right, good. If we have no further comment, we're going to go do these one at.
Question quick.
Mr. Adams?
What, for the people that applied in like the renters, electric company and stuff are they gonna get 1099s that we direct paid to the end?
Not know that answer. I don't
That's
think
why
we
I'm
know
asking.
that yet. I think it came out of businesses that the Treasury changed the guidelines. but-
$500 payments because they're,
Well, because we're direct paying to a landlord
Yeah,
so I would think they would get a 1099 as well, I would
I-
hope.
I'll have to I don't know that answer.
I don't know that answer.
Yeah.
Okay. Can we
Can
find out?
find out, but.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so basically, one thing, since I got the floor now, one thing, we kind of had a deadline of December 4th, but then that got changed by DEM to December 3rd. So it probably didn't affect that many people at that point.
No, we left the applications open through December 4th to
Okay.
honor the board's deadline. So that wasn't a problem for our citizens.
All right, so let's take these requests that you're asking for. The town of Interlaken, and you've got 2 requests from them. So we're looking at, for the $479.99, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then the other town of Interlaken, if I'm not mistaken, this 91,91179, that's because they found out through their accountant that their police salaries could go towards the COVID, right, public safety, so that's why they're requesting that. Okay. So, board members, let's debate the conversation on the town of Interlaken on those 2 items. Mr. Rawls, you have the floor, you have your light on.
I'm good for it now.
Okay. Okay, any other comments about those? Do we want to fund those at the 100%?
Mr. Chairman, if
Yeah.
I may, you want me to
Mr.
turn
Turner?
my light on?
No, sir. You
Okay.
got my attention?
I think that while it might be a request that meets the letter of the CARES Act funding, I don't know that coming in and them being the only municipality that's allowed this funding is fair. We didn't allow the city to ask for it. We did. Okay, did they ask for it? And did they get it as part of their funding?
It's pending FDM review, but yes, they've claimed it.
And it will be within the 13 million?
Yes, it's within their initial allocation.
Well, I think if the city got it, then Interlaken ought to get it too.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a fair statement?
That would be fair. I think if you didn't apply, it's your own fault, and it's,
Well, it came right at the end, Mr.
yeah,
Chairman.
it did, but, the town of Interlaken found out, the city of Palaca has done theirs, so,
I'm good with it, as
Yeah.
long as they're not the only one, and we just hand it to them and nobody else, but,
Well,
and
you got it.
it's within the $13 million, not as the additional allocation.
Right.
Yeah,
all right, so let's go by consensus. Are we good for those 2?
yeah.
Mr. Adams, Turner?
Yes.
Rawls? Okay, good. We're all in agreement that we'll go ahead and fund those 2 items. Next one would be the Arc of Putnam. So let's take these one at a time then. The Arc of Putnam is asking for 15,100, is that a 32 or 52? 32. That's okay, it's my glasses. Question for you before we start debate on these items. These items could or could not be approved by DEM or Widow Bryan. So,
Putnam was completely approved.
okay, so the Art of Putnam, so that one's pretty no-brainer at that
Could
point.
we handle that one separate, Mr.
We do.
Chairman?
Okay, we'll handle that one separate. So what's the consensus of the board at this point?
Give it to them.
Commissioner Rawls?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
What's the consensus of the board as far as ARCA Putnam? The 15,130,
I don't have a problem.
okay. Mr. Pickens?
Yeah, but you said that they justified all the expenses.
Mr.
yeah.
Rawls and Mr.
Collect the backup documentation, but
Okay.
they're purchasing all PPE and supplies to, protect their vulnerable clients.
Well, you have all 5 commissioners on consensus to move that forward. The next item will be the Bread of Life. That is a $28,299.85. Mr. Turner, you have the floor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. If, could we, both of these are the same issue, that they don't have, haven't completed their backup documentation to make Widow Bryan happy at this point. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Well, would it be a possibility if we, Mr. Chairman, would it be a possibility if we handled these two to where we would approve them if they met that level of documentation, because they're also within the original 13, correct?
Yes, sir.
Original tranche of money.
What we can do is work with these two entities, and if FDEM approves their package and documentation and funds us the money, then we would give them the money,
I'm
but
in
not
agreement
in
with that.
advance of.
Okay, I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
As
Mr.
long
Adams?
as,
No, I think that makes sense. I'd like to see what they're requesting for these particular two.
I can send you the packet. It's also in the board packet, workshop packet for
The
me.
items, what the items,
I didn't
like
see that in the board packet.
the freezers, what, the
I can send
actual-
it to you.
Yeah, I would love
Okay.
to see that.
Can we turn the air up a little bit? God, it's cold. I'm
Yes,
sorry,
yes,
Commissioner,
please.
but I get to be the chairman now, so that's my thermostat.
I just turned it up.
Okay, Commissioner Rawls, are you good to move this forward?
Let's move it forward.
I actually texted him and told him it's too cold in here.
Okay. All right, so on consensus, all 5 commissioners agree to let you work with DEM on these 2 items, Epicure and Bread of Life. And if they can fit and they can qualify, fine. If they don't, then that's where we're at, okay?
If I may, Mr.
One
Chairman.
May,
last,
Mr. Turner?
And if they qualify for part of it, let's say, for instance, that, they've asked for 40, and I'm not pulling one out, but if,
Yep.
let's say that they qualify for half that amount through Widow Bryan and y'all's opinion on the CARES Act funding and what have you, then I would be willing to go ahead and fund them at the lesser amount, but it needs to be something that we feel good that they qualified for.
no, absolutely. Whatever FDEM funds us, we can fund them.
Okay, good.
I had one last item, sir. It was new because it was new to me as of yesterday. I need the board to authorize someone to sign off on the RFVs that are sent back and approved for funding. If you could do that, Chairman.
I can do it, or our chairman can do it. I mean, our administrator. Which one does the board, what's the pleasure of the board?
Well, either or, I think that either or would be fine. If you're available, great. If you're not around, then I think you should be able to authorize Mr. Suggs to go in there and sign whatever is necessary if you're not available.
That's your motion?
Yes, sir. I move that. Yeah,
Mr.
go
Chair,
ahead.
it should be the chairman.
Okay, we have a,
Should be the chairman, okay. I move the chairman have that authority.
okay, do we have a second?
Second it.
Yep.
We have a proper motion by Commissioner Turner, proper second by Commissioner Pickens. Any further discussion on the chairman signing that? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passes unanimous. Thank you.
I sure hope you aren't going on vacation in the next 30 days.
I've been on vacation since the hurricane. When I got stuck, remember?
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
remember
don't
that,
go there.
yeah.
It's terrible time. Okay, item B. We're going to be talking planning and development, simulated gambling business, I thought it was gaming, ordinance discussion. Who's taking that? Mike Brown, are you taking that? And Mike, we're going to be talking about the revised edition that you gave me yesterday afternoon. Is that where we're at?
Mike Brown, Planning and Development Services.
Now, before we go there, I don't know if every commissioner got a revised one that was handed
I
yesterday.
believe they all, and I will have to defer to and ask Jim real quickly, did we provide the commissioners with copy of all the changes that we made as of yesterday?
We have it here.
We have it electronically,
Check it now, or I can
and we'll talk about it.
I'd like a copy if I can get it.
Let's take a 3-minute recess while you do a copy of it. We'll be back at 3 o'clock. Jim is passing out the packets. Still nice and warm. It's the
Mr.
warmest thing
Chairman?
we got up here right now.
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman, as we were talking
Stud?
earlier, I appreciate the recess to get this information printed out, and we'll do better next time, make sure it's passed out before the meeting. I appreciate it, Sergeant, and thank you for your indulgence.
thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Mr. Brown, you have the floor, sir.
Okay. Yeah, real quickly, Mike Brown, Planning Development Services. I'm just going to do a quick introduction of how we got here and then turn it over to Mr. Sammons to go over in detail anything you want, or at least the latest version. As you're aware, right now, running on 3 or 4 years ago, we ran into an issue, because the county had no regulations of these I'll just call them, as we all call them, internet cafes popping up because we didn't have any regulations on where they could go. Number of them were it was becoming a nuisance to the county. They were popping up in residential areas, and there was a lot of noise, parking, inadequate parking, and other issues. As we checked on some of them, there were some life and safety issues involved. With that, the county decided to initiate a moratorium on any new ones. Existing ones could continue as long as they were legally open. We've been working on a ordinance ever since. Again, I'm not going to hide, staff has been a little bit remiss. It's lagged very too long from a staff standpoint. But we're finally have developed an ordinance that staff is recommending that would allow for the internet cafe use in certain zoning districts with certain other restrictions. And that's where we're at today. Again, a workshop with the board to see if they are in line with, or whatever changes you may want to see before we move forward to the formal ordinance adoption process, which will include going for the planning committee and then coming again before the Board of County Commissioners for the final adoption. So that was just, I wanted to lay the framework of how we got to where we're at. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to John Sammons, who had drafted this ordinance. And as you know, part of the last minute changes, and again, staff, I apologize for not getting this out to you sooner, is we met one-on-one with all of the commissioners as we went through this to get your input. We worked closely with the Sheriff's Department. I'm not saying that anybody agrees with what we're proposing. This is staff's recommendation at this point. But we've tried to work with a number of the interested parties to bring something forward. And so with that, I'll turn it over to John, unless you have some questions of me.
Before you leave the microphone, I do have a procedural question. If, just say for instance, today's really the first time we've seen this in this draft form, and then we're going to hear testimony from a lot of people, it looks like. And we're not diabolically opposed with our Sheriff's Department, by no means. You know, we just play different roles sometimes.
Right.
So when do you likely see that this would go before the Planning Council, Planning Commission, and then be back to the board?
I would anticipate, and again, that may be depending on how today's meeting goes, I could see where we could go to the Planning Commission in January, and then probably February we'd be coming towards back to the Board of County Commissioners for the 2 hearings for final adoption. Okay. I mean, that's preliminary at this point, and again, I think a lot of it will depend on what feedback we may hear today. You may want to send it back to staff to work on it and come back before you as part of the workshop. That's your prerogative. We'll do whatever 3 of you desire to do.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Turner, you have a question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just wondering why it came to us instead of going to the Planning Commission. Because usually it would go to the Planning Commission, go through them for their input, and then come out with a recommendation or whatever, and then it would come to the board for final approval. So
Well,
how did that process change from?
I will tell you, staff decided we'd take this approach because it really came down, from my thinking, to two options. One is an outright ban, or what staff has recommended right now, which, as of today, which would be to allow them with certain restrictions. If the desire is to go with an outright ban, then I didn't want to start down the one path if the desire of the
basically,
board is
if I may,
to
so
maybe go another way.
Basically, what you're asking today is for a direction that the board wants
Yeah,
to go in.
yeah, that's it. As a workshop, we're just asking for a
So it's
direction.
either an outright ban or an ordinance.
Yeah.
Didn't our
Yeah.
council
And there may
tell
be a
us
few other,
opinion that we can't do an outright ban?
No, I mean, there's reasons why I would advise going towards the regulatory side, but, I mean, some of the issue of whether or not it can be outright banned is still being litigated across the state.
So an outright ban is an option, it's just not the preferred option, or something option, yeah.
For the attorney and for our bank book, if we've got to like get an outside counsel to fight the lawsuit. So, Mr. Chairman, if I
Yeah,
may.
you still have the floor.
I think we got the horse ahead of the cart here. I think we need to decide a route that we're gonna go, and then we need to let it go through the proper channels. And the proper channel, for us to make comments and changes and recommendations at this point, and then take it from us to the planning commission. If I was a member of the planning commission, I'd be very hesitant to make any changes to a document that the board already approved that goes to the planning commission. So, Mr. Chairman, in my opinion, I think we should take the testimony that's about to come before the commission today, where we're not wasting everybody's time for coming down here and on this issue. But then I think we need to just give them direction on which way we need to go and send it to the proper channels, which would be to the planning commission first.
I'm good with that. Does the rest of the board concur? Okay. All right, let's start our, we'll just start our testimony with our public comment period on this item. The first one is Ms. Sessions. If you'll come up and state your name and address for the record, please. Please try to keep it within 3 minutes. If you go a little long, we're not going to eject you or anything, but we will ask you to wrap it up, okay?
Okay.
Thank you.
My name is Lakeisha Session. I live at 2300 Bronson Street, apartment C116, Palaca, Florida. My questions and comments are the following. The city and the county allowed the internet cafes to open. Code enforcers came and inspected the buildings. I was in fish games when the county sheriff's office raided that. They threw little grenades. They had us down on the ground like common criminals. If they were illegal, I felt like the business should have been closed prior to customers coming in the building and having guns pointed at them. Okay? And then my other thing is, they just raided the internet cafes like a month ago. They walked in calmly and arrested the workers. There were people who thought they were at legitimate jobs, now have criminal records. I mean, as a county, as a city, we don't even know if you're gonna ban them or not, but people's lives are being affected very negatively. So, I mean, I'm just wondering, and then my third question is, I was wondering why the state attorney's office did not pick up the charges for this last arrest.
I know you're looking at me for an answer.
No,
I
it's
can't
just
answer. Yeah,
public
thank you.
comments.
Yeah. Ms. Sessions, you're talking to us and not
Okay.
to somebody else. They'll answer if they choose to answer.
Okay,
Anything else?
that's all.
Thank you very much for coming. Our next speaker is LaShawn Harris.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
My question is that,
Ms. Harris, will you speak right into the microphone, please?
my question is for everyone to see why was they closed, and that a lot of us is out of jobs now. I've been working for the internet cafe since 2006, different ones, and now that they made these arrests, is a lot of people went to jail and got records now, but then how they been opening since 2006 up until now for everybody to go to jail saying they're illegal, and they only can be open if y'all approve for them to be open. They have to have license, and if they're going to the courthouse getting the license, well then that's giving them approval to open up. And then for us, I work for Gold Rush, and we're in the city, and we are all compliance. Did everything that they asked for you to do, but then the county come along and overpower the city and make these arrests. Now, I worked it that day, and he was trying to take me to jail, but when he did take it, he took the second worker to jail, and that's not fair.
The county did not do that. Whether the sheriff's department did it, that's their business, but the county, we did not come down on top of the city.
I'm just saying the county from the city.
Got you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Kamitra Merritt, did I do that right?
Ask them to state their name and address, please.
Ms. Merritt, will you state your name and address for the record, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Kamitra Merritt. I reside at 3835 Reed Street, Apartment 8, Palatka, Florida. I'm here today to speak on behalf of the adult arcades here in Palatka. The adverse effect of being arrested, losing our incomes, possible evictions, car repossessions, more individuals on unemployment, or ending up on public assistance, basically becoming a burden to society rather than a taxpayer. We were shut down and arrested without warning. Not only are the employees affected, but the customers are losing a place to gather and meet all walks of life. To some of the customers, visiting adult arcades is the highlight of their week. The city of Palatka is missing out on the revenue that is generated by the customers visiting the adult arcades, whether it be lodging, food, gas purchased on a daily basis. The businesses are frequently catering meals from local restaurants weekly, as well as purchasing items from stores and businesses for day-to-day operations. Most of us were already affected by COVID shutdowns earlier this year and are finally catching up on our bills and everything, and then this, right before the holidays. Over 100 employees have lost their incomes. I am coming to you today praying that you all have open minds as well as hearts, and asking you that you allow us to reopen until you are able to vote and regulate the business. This will allow us to get our affairs in order. Thank you.
Okay.
You have a question?
Yes.
All right. We never shut you down. This board has not done that. So whoever did, they're going to explain that soon. Mr. Rawls?
In your introduction, you said people have lost their place to gamble. Was that correct?
No, place of employment, place to gather. Social gathering.
Okay, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you.
That's okay.
Fine. Thank you, Mr.
You're
Rawls.
welcome.
Mr. Turner?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, nothing that we are talking about today has anything to do within the city limits of Palatka.
Right.
Our ordinance does not override their ordinance, and it's my understanding. And so anything we decide to do in the outside of the city would be what we're talking about today, not within the city limits. We don't have that authority. Or Crescent City, Interlochen, right, probably Willaca even. I just wanted to make that clear, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Point well taken. Mary Fortner, you're the next speaker. Please state your name and your address for the record, please.
What did the shirt say? I see a theme now.
Oh.
You got one on?
Those are,
Oh,
okay.
Those are, okay.
Arcade.
Okay.
My name is Mary Fournier, and I reside at 143 Massey Lane.
Can you
Here in
speak right into
Palatka.
the microphone, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was born and raised here in Putnam County. I'm also a single mother of 2 beautiful little girls. Working at the game room has allowed me to support myself and my 2 daughters, something that I take very much pride in. During the holiday season, everyone makes plans to do things with their families. Although this county is in the midst of a pandemic, I was one of the lucky ones to remain employed, or so I thought. Before the holiday, everything came to a halt, with me left wondering how Santa is coming for my 2 little girls. As a lifelong resident, I have seen many entertainment companies come and go in this county. There is very little for citizens to be able to do for entertainment. Why close companies down that keep things local and keep jobs in the county? Things are hard enough with the abnormal of wearing masks and social distancing becoming the new normal. We had customers of all adult age groups coming in. These companies are more than just a pastime and entertainment, but also a social environment for all age groups. The social interaction was taken from some people that would otherwise be sitting at home during the holiday season with nobody around them. Before the holiday season, financial stability was stripped from all of the employees working in the game rooms. Closing the game rooms affected many people financially and their holidays. My story is just one among many affected by the shutdowns, and all the employees have their own story to tell as well. I'd like you to ask yourselves if you just simply personally dislike the game rooms. If so, does closing the game rooms solve? What does it solve? Aside from having more employed people in the county, having more people struggle and taking away a means of entertainment, I personally do not see the negative allowing the game rooms to remain open. Although I do agree with having them be regulated, I do not see a need in closing them. I do not understand what has changed to cause them to be shut down, and I thank you for your time and happy holidays.
Thank you. I think it's time to make a point. The county put a moratorium on 3 years ago for no new ones to be opened up. We haven't shut anything down. I don't know why you're shut down. If you're a legal entity, you shouldn't be shut down. We have not shut anything down. Okay?
Does that mean that we can continue
We have not shut
business?
anything down. This board has not shut anything down.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you a question real quick?
Yes.
What business are you referencing?
I work at the one located near Project Play, and
That's in the city limits, correct? I believe that is.
I believe it's in the county.
Is it? Okay.
I would have to double check and look at a map.
Has it been shut down?
Yes, sir.
And what were the reasons?
Honestly,
Okay,
they were not given to us.
I'm not familiar with why you're shut down, so.
And that's why there's so much confusion with the employees that work there as well as ownership, because we are not 100% sure why, and now we have people that are worried about going back to work for being arrested, and it's the holiday season. People are trying to buy gifts for their family. They're trying to make
Could you
memories.
hold on for just a minute? People in the audience, I need your attention. The conversations that happen back there come up here, and we can't pay attention. Let's have respect while we're in the building. We'll respect your time if you'll respect our time. Miss Mary's talking right now, and she deserves that opportunity. Thank you.
I see the point that you're making. So this is something to do with the sheriff's department shutting you down, nobody from building and zoning or planning services went in and shut y'all down, correct?
Correct. It was, we were just working, and then the sheriff's department
Okay.
had come in and arrested all the employees that were working. We weren't given a reason.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
But-
Thank you, Commissioner Rawls.
Thank you for your
Turner.
time.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that it's a very good point that you brought up, that Putnam County Board of County Commissioners hasn't closed anything. I think what happened was, and if I misspeak here, I would expect the sheriff or the chief deputy to stand up and come up forward, but it's my understanding that they deemed those internet cafes to not being operated legally. And so when they went in there that day and busted them, if that's the proper term, then it's up to the owner. Do they want to come into compliance and open back up again? I don't think they shut anybody down permanently that I'm aware of. So it's up to the owner of y'all's internet cafes, or it's up to them to decide if they want to open back up and be legal about it. If it's not legal, then they open back up, they're gonna go through the same bust again that they went through last time. So, you know, I just want it to be as crystal clear as possible. The Board of County Commissioners hadn't shut single one down that I'm aware of. They went and made sure that they were legal, and when they weren't, they arrested the people that were running it, and that was my understanding. So thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman,
Mr. Turner.
for allowing that.
Linda Woodham?
Good afternoon. I'm Linda Woodham. I live at 160 Smith Lane in Satsuma, Florida. I'm a single person. I have no family. I'm retired. And I find the game rooms one of the only places in this county where there's not rebel flags flying. It don't matter if you're black or white or old or young, where everybody comes together and enjoys each other's company. It does my heart good when I see the young people taking after the older ladies and bringing them chairs and offering them water. Those are my friends. Over 100 of them lost their jobs. The rest of us, we like to meet in the mornings for coffee, the other ladies, and play our games. Some of us don't like to go shopping. And when I drive all the way to Marion County, Alachua County, Volusia County, and I see 80-year-old friends of mine had to drive all that way just to do what they enjoy doing, it's kind of crazy to me. And then at nighttime, you think of the young people with not a lot of driving experience driving home from these places. Never mind the economic downfall, you know, buying gas over there, buying food over there, when we could be spending the money here. Mr. Turner, you said that you are unaware. I was there when this happened. This was not like in the city of Palatka. I was there when they came into there and asked them to do certain things, and they did everything they expected. We had security guards. It's a clean, safe place to be. They asked them to do certain things, and they did every single thing that they were expected to do, and now all of a sudden, you know, we have no place to go, nothing to do, and they can't feed their families or friends. I'm just kind of beside it that everybody says there's no reason for it. We've asked why was this done, and nobody's given us a reason. Not to the employees, not to the owners, and not to the customers. I don't know what you're supposed to do. We wear our masks in there. They have everything spaced out. It's spotless. I walked into the grocery store today and actually walked out because it was just too overcrowded in this COVID nightmare we're going through. But you never find that in the game room. They did everything they were expected to do. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Ms. Woodham. Next speaker, Mr. Kelly Mathis.
Good afternoon. May I? I'm far enough away.
Yes.
May I make it a little clearer to try to understand me? Thank you. My name is Kelly Mathis. I'm an attorney. I work out of Jacksonville, 3577 Cardinal Point Drive, and represent a number of the game rooms here in Putnam County and other places. And on behalf of the game room owners, the employees, and all of the many, many patrons that are citizens of Putnam County that enjoy these places, we would like you to continue down this path of regulation. We would like to work with you on these issues and be a productive part of this county and work with the county on this ordinance. Right now, in no disrespect at all to the Planning and Zoning Commission, right now the latest draft of the ordinance, I'm not sure I saw the one last night, it basically commingles different concepts of different laws together. So it's not just a planning and zoning issue that they're more qualified than I am. It's taking legal issues of different statutes, including the gambling statutes, including the sweepstakes statutes, including other law, and kind of jumbling that up. So what you're dealing here is two parts, not only zoning, but legal issues as well. And the way this ordinance is drafted, the legal issues part of it doesn't make sense. You have two mutually exclusive types of statutes and games being put together by pulling parts from different ordinances around the state. So what I would ask the board today is if you would consider letting the county attorney work on the legal issues of the statute. And I would be more than happy to work with them. My clients welcome regulation. There are a number of bad apples out there, just like there's a number of bad apple lawyers out there. There are a number of bad apple game rooms out there. And I hope my clients aren't one of them. But I can tell you, if this board passes an ordinance, they're going to strictly adhere to that. And they think it does need to be cleaned up. And they do want people that are not flying right not to continue to operate. They don't have a problem with that. But we need to try to get this clarified. And if I have some more time, maybe I can explain just very briefly
I'm going to allow you some more time. So
the issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
So what you have is you have gambling statutes. Generally, gambling is illegal in the state of Florida. This is my law school lecture, but I'll make it simple. Gambling consists of three parts. Gambling consists of paying money for the chance to win a prize. And I think everybody's in agreement on that. The law is pretty clear. It's kind of like a three-legged step stool, that you have to have all three of those elements. Well, if you remove one of those elements, you have something else, but you may not have gambling. For instance, if you remove the element of chance and you have something called a skill game, in other words, there's skill involved in the game, then that is not gambling, but you also have to comply with other requirements of the Florida skill laws. There's a separate statute. It was originally enacted as the Chuck E. Cheese statute, believe it or not. That's what they called it.
Well, that's what I asked them about yesterday, so I made reference to that. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so that's how it originally came to be. So that law evolved over time, and in 2015, another version of it got passed and got changed. But that took it out of the gambling. But it also had certain other requirements that had to be met. If you remove the element of payment, then you have something that an exception to that under the sweepstakes statute. Think of McDonald's monopoly. You go in, you buy a Big Mac, fries. They don't do it anymore because they got caught cheating. But in any event, you buy the product, and you can promote the product or service by giving away free prizes. Those free prizes can be cash. Statutes, no limitation. McDonald's gave away $1 million a day when they were running that promotion, cash. So that's okay. But again, you're getting into the nuances of the law here. You have other games that remove the element of chance by something called a pre-reveal or full disclosure. In other words, before you ever participate in the game, you're given the result and you decide whether or not to participate. So you really have kind of three separate types of games, and the ordinance kind of mashes some of those together without making that distinction. And so we'd like the opportunity to work with the county, clarify those, work with them on regulations. We're fine with regulation. My clients are fine with regulation. Now, the sheriff and I do disagree on what exact games are legal and illegal, and we've had some issues on that before. And that's kind of created this dilemma that these game rooms find themselves in now. Is every time they try to reopen, sheriff's of the opinion, I think there might be something wrong here, shuts them down, never goes anywhere. Nobody's been successfully prosecuted, but unfortunately, that's what they're faced with. Hopefully, if we can get a county regulation, make it clear what the rules are, who's in, who's out, then everybody can live with that, and we can just go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mathis.
Any questions?
Any questions from Mr. Mathis? Okay, thank you.
This time,
I have a
Mr.
question.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Ross?
Are there any of the cities or counties in Florida that preclude these type of
Sorry, but microphone.
Thank you. Are there any other cities or counties in the state that preclude this type of establishment from opening up?
There are, yes, is the short answer. There are those that have regulated and those that have prohibited. Those that have prohibited, they've created a separate category, something they call simulated gambling. In other words, it looks like gambling, so we don't want it. And that's, those are being challenged throughout the state. So there's that question. But there are quite a number that have regulated it and had permits. And then there are those like Jacksonville that regulated it, quit enforcing their regulation, and then prohibited it. So, and I have those sample ordinances that I'm happy to share.
This is prohibited in Jacksonville?
It is currently.
Okay. Or what other, we're a population of 75,000. Are there other counties that are our size that allow these or don't allow these?
I know Lake County is looking at regulations. I know that, I don't have the list off the top of my head, but there are other counties that haven't acted. Wakulla County, the one that comes to mind that may be comparable.
Define regulations, like in Lake County, for instance. What kind of regulations are they looking at?
Well, they're looking at the same types of things in this draft ordinance, regulating the number of hours, regulating whether there's security on premises, regulating, providing for inspection by law enforcement. There are also other counties in Jacksonville did regulated the number of permits that were applicable. In other words, they were concerned about too many of them opening up. And so they said, okay, we're going to have X number of permits, and when those are gone, that's it. So different things. There's different varieties out there of regulation.
Okay. I'm good.
You done? Thank you.
Right, yeah.
I have one question.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
In going through the proposed ordinance, it appeared to me that if we passed an ordinance the way it is right now, that we'd be placing a sticker on a machine.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've heard this morning or this afternoon, that doesn't guarantee that that machine is a legal machine according to law enforcement. So I think we'd be giving people a false sense of hope if they walk in, like this lady who's retired that walks in and sits down and sees a Putnam County inspection sticker, kind of like when you pull up to get gas and you realize a gallon's a gallon, if you will, because the sticker's up there telling you a gallon equals a gallon. My concern is we're not in that business. I don't think our inspectors are in that business to legalize, to say, yeah, it looks legal to me, but tomorrow it might not be legal. So I'm a little concerned about that. But your business encourages regulation. You said you don't mind regulation. Mm-hmm. Could you address that sticker thing? Because that's going to be a problem for me.
Sure, and I understand that. The way that Jacksonville handled that is in order to get the sticker, you had to provide a lot of different information, one item of which was an actual testing by an independent laboratory, a lab certification report had to be submitted before you got the sticker. And what Jacksonville also did is said, well, if we're going to do that, we're going to have to train somebody, we're going to have to pay them, and you game rooms need to bear that cost. And they did. They took that amount, they funded a position just for that, and they bore that cost, and my clients are willing to do that. bear the cost of enforcement. That's only fair.
But that would be the only business that we would actually tie someone to, a pay-to-play, basically, type situation, where we're going to come inspect you and you've got to pay for it every time we come to inspect you, right?
I don't know if there's
I
other
can't think of another
examples.
one that we
in-
do that way.
Yeah, I don't know of any, Mr. Chairman, I don't know of any other examples in Putnam County, but I know that some counties do that. That's exactly what Jacksonville
Mr.
did. Is now Putnam County may not require a full-time person. It may require half-time or something like that, and so it would be proportional. And of course, it'd also be fewer game rooms
Understand.
as well, so it wouldn't require perhaps a full-time person. But to expect the game rooms to pay for that, I don't think there's a problem with that. I think that's only fair.
Thank you, Mr. Adamczak. You have a question?
I suppose, how many of these different gaming operations do you represent?
I don't know, quite a number of them throughout the state, and I have for quite a few years.
So I assume you have efforts with the state to lobby them for some sort of commission or gaming regulations at the state level. To do this county by county seems extremely inefficient. And this county in particular, we're not exactly the richest county in the world.
Right.
And as far as our finances as a Board of County Commissions, what is your efforts at the state level to look for a commission on internet cafes or gambling overall? I mean, I would think if you commissioned to get approval through the state for some sort of ordinances for gambling, that would allow your businesses to grow further into other areas. Why is it that we're fighting this at the county level? What is your efforts at the state level?
The state level is complicated. So the game rooms, like the local game rooms here in Putnam County, are really small fish. All right, they're local people that have maybe one game room, maybe two or three. When we get up to the state level, we're dealing with the Seminole Indian tribe that has a compact that pays millions and millions of dollars. We're dealing with Las Vegas casinos that are very anxious to come into Florida. We're dealing with the poker rooms, which are way bigger than us. And so that's one of the issues at the state level, where this just is not getting the attention. Right now, gambling law in Florida, it's spread out over everybody, and it's very, very complicated. You have the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services that regulates sweepstakes. You've got the Division of Alcohol Beverage that handles any kind of gaming issue if they've got a liquor license in a bar, in an Elks Club, in a Moose Lodge. You've got the State Lottery Commission. You've got the folks that deal with the Seminole Tribe issue. You've got the folks that deal with the poker rooms. And there has been talk for years in Tallahassee about trying to get all this in one place, and it just hasn't happened.
So basically,
So
my
there's a
understanding
void.
of what you're saying is you're taking the path of least resistance by coming to the counties instead of going to the state.
No, we're taking the only avenue that's really available. Do my clients want to go to the state? Absolutely. But right now, it's being dealt with. The issues are coming up before the local Board of County Commissioners, and until the state takes action, they've got a choice to either close down and hope the state takes action one day, or try to stay open piece by piece. And there are quite a number of these game rooms spread out all over the state. But it's right now, it's the piece by piece kind of situation we're faced with to stay alive.
Commissioner Rawls?
So, we have a building department, and as a contractor, I need a building department to be able to buy permits. As a citizen, if I'm not building a house, I have no use for a building department. But that's a regulatory department. So you said that you would be in favor of the county establishing a regulatory commission of some sort that would be able to oversee these establishments. Is that correct?
Yeah, we would have no problem with that, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it needs a whole commission, but certainly somebody that's
You'd have to have a
understands
department of some type, and then
Right.
somebody's going to have to be able to hear complaints. Like, I mean, I don't know that it'd have to be the county commission necessarily, but So, we've heard from a couple of employees that have had to bear the burden of the sins of others, it sounds like. Why is it that the business owners are not held accountable? I'm just curious about that.
Well, I mean, they could be. They could be held accountable. Certainly, there has been business owners in the past that have been arrested and charges were brought against them. So that has happened in the past.
Why are the employees being charged? Are you familiar with any of the cases you're talking about yourself?
Yes, I handled them.
Why are the reasons that the employees are being arrested?
Now, that's a question I have no answer for. I know that in the last set of call them raids or whatever you want to call them, that the employees have been arrested, which is extremely unusual. I've only known of one other time that's happened, and that was in Leon County in Tallahassee. But I know that the charges were dropped immediately against all of them. So I don't know why. I don't understand the legal theory for the employees. I don't know why they were arrested.
Okay. Are you aware of establishments like this that have had illegal acts committed in or on their properties, like paying cash and allowing illegal gambling? Are you aware of anything like that having transpired at any of these type of establishments in the past?
I am sure that there are. Let me clarify.
No,
paying
I'm saying, are you
cash.
aware of any?
Paying cash is not illegal. So I mean, I can't answer it. Paying cash under a sweepstakes give away cash. Publishers Clearinghouse gives away money all the time. That is not illegal, and that's part of the confusion that I think we have with the Sheriff's Department. But are there some that are operating illegally? Absolutely. I hope they don't call me to represent them.
The reason I ask is I talked to one of my employees the other day. He actually overheard part of the conversation you and I were having.
Okay.
And when I hung the phone up, he wanted to tell me about his cousin who basically blew his entire paycheck over a 1.5 day period between a Friday and a Saturday, went and borrowed money and came back because he was put in a position to win money at one point, and then the next time he goes back, he loses everything. It caused a lot of strife in his family. He and his wife ended up separating, eventually divorcing because it was gambling. He has an addiction to gambling, apparently. So the question to you again is, are you aware of any illegal activities yourself that go on in any of these establishments that you represent?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Turner, you're next.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, the first thing I think we need to decide, we can debate the issues and the moralities and whether it's legal or not, and we can spend weeks back and forth on that. What I think this commission needs to do is decide one issue first, and that's, do we ban them or do we move forward? And then if we decide to move forward, because I think that option was given a minute ago by our attorney. So if we decide to move forward with it, then it needs to go to Planning Commission. If the commissioners want to make some remarks, general remarks before it goes to Planning Commission, such as does the lawyer do the law, and does the zoning people do, or the planning and zoning people do the land use and zoning, and how do we merge the two if that's the way we're going to end up going? And personally, I'd kind of like to find a way that if somebody is deemed to be operating outside of, or the machines are not legal or whatever, that the people get a citation perhaps that are working. But I don't think that anybody that gets paid to operate the front desk of any business should be the person that goes and gets a jail door slammed on them at the end of the evening. So I'm gonna have to disagree on that one. But I understand that we've got to tie it somehow through, if we decide to go with the ordinance, we have to tie it somehow to the owner of the business and the owner of the building itself. And there has to be substantial penalties if they violate that at the end of the day. And something that's substantial enough that it's financially not feasible for them to not uphold or adhere to the ordinance if the commission decides to go that way. And one last comment, Mr. Chairman, I think that it's very difficult to completely try to ban undesirable businesses, because what is undesirable for me may not be undesirable for somebody else. So I think we need to make sure that we zone them in such a way that we try to take as much of the undesirability out of it, if you may, and that we need to let them operate, because it doesn't matter. I'm not going to name all the undesirable businesses, but there's a lot of them, and there's reasons we don't want them next to a school or right next door to a church or whatever. There's reasons we don't want that, but we could do that. And I think even the proposed ordinance they brought today, which I think needs to go back to the planning commission before it's presented to us for approval, I think it handled a big part of that. I think John did a very good job trying to handle those issues, and I think that just needs to go through planning commission and come back or stop here today, one or the other. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Commissioner Adams?
Earlier today, in part of our consent agenda, we made a vote basically to fund some sponsorship for addiction. Basically, this is drug and alcohol addiction for recovery. So addiction is a big deal in a poorer county that has a lot of people that are under, the standard median income of the state of Florida. This county happens to fall within that standard. To me, just like we tried to protect people from COVID, whether we agree with the means done by the state or locally here or by the city of Palatka, which was different than the county did, or not, we have some diligence and expectation, I think, on us to try to do something to protect the people from themselves in situations where they're drug addicted, to keep them from being arrested, where they're alcoholism, or whether it's gambling. Whether this is considered gambling legally by the state or not, I have no idea, because they haven't really been clear on it. So I don't feel comfortable saying we can move forward with this at all until the state gives us some sort of guidelines, an explanation, or a commission that allows us to see the guidelines set forth by them. In this case, I don't think a small county like us can manage, and shouldn't be expected to manage, basically creating a commission or creating rules around this subject. It just isn't something that's feasible, in my opinion.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other comments? Thank you, Mr. Mathis. Well, I think, let me finish up the public comment. Mr. Rawls, you got one last thing?
One group we haven't heard from yet is from the Sheriff's Department. And in speaking with the Sheriff's Department, it seems like their biggest concern is the fact that they have an issue with criminal activity that happens on the premises, that's allowed to happen by the owners on the premises. And they've taken a position that they're not in favor of putting an ordinance in if it's at all possible not to. The other day when I sat down with staff, the comment that I made was, once we go down this road, we're down it. Once we start allowing them to open, we have to allow them to stay open. We're not going to be able to come back in the future. So I personally have never been inside one. I've never spent a dime in one. I couldn't tell you what kind of games we're even talking about. So I need more information, and I'm sure that you guys have been on the commission longer than I have. Obviously, Mr. Adamsack and I are the two new guys. This hasn't been discussed in any length since I've been on the commission. We've had the moratorium in place, and it's remained there. That's all I knew about it. Now we're having a fervent conversation, and I think that we need to be more fully involved to see what it is that we're allowing to come in here, and then decide, like Commissioner Turner said, where we're going to allow it to happen, if we're going to allow it to happen. Personally, my knee-jerk reaction was, let's just ban these for right now, and take a hard look at it later. We've got a lot of issues we need to deal with as a community. Substance abuse and mental health issues, to say the least. A failed economy that we were just starting to come out of, and now we're being kicked right in the pants again. And I think this is absolutely poor timing right now at best. And so I would be in favor of following suit with the other jurisdictions right now, and just putting a ban on it until we can get this under control, or leave the moratorium in place until we can decide exactly what it is we're dealing with, because I've got more questions than I've got answers. I mean, you're not able to answer the questions that I've got. I feel bad for any employee that has to go in and bear the brunt of their employer's issues. I was living on my boat once upon a time when one of the marina operators was crying when I went in. And I said, "What's wrong?" She said she'd just been handed a citation because she sold beer to an underage individual. So I went to court with her, and Judge Miller looked at the lady and said, "Was a person about this tall?" And she said, "Yeah." And he goes, "I would have sold them beer too," because they were set up by the Alcohol and Tobacco Division of Florida. But this isn't what we're dealing with here. This is something a little bit different. And the stories that I've heard on the other side are that there are criminal elements to this, and this may not be something we want in our backyard. So I'd like to have a lot more information before I'm forced to make a yes or no on this.
All right, so let me clarify something before we move on. You're in favor of the moratorium continuing until more information comes about?
Correct.
I think, Mr. Adamczak, is that what I heard from you too, or do you, I don't want to put words in your mouth.
I thought my understanding coming in is that we couldn't extend the moratorium anymore, so.
No, we can extend it. We just have to continue, we have to have something in place. Either we're going to ban them or we're going to continue down the road of the ordinance. But we can't keep kicking the can down the road for years at a time. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, legally, a moratorium can be put into place temporarily, and traditionally they're 6 months, sometimes at the longest a year, while a local government is actively working on developing ordinances and soliciting public comment. But a moratorium that's 3 years old, I mean, we're putting ourselves in a position where we're working on it now, but it's something that needs to actively be done. And that's why when you extended the moratorium this last time for 120 days, it's because that's the timeline we're looking at to bring this into conclusion.
So let me clarify, when's the moratorium expire that we currently have in place right now?
What's the date? It was 120 days from the last meeting, I believe. Isn't that when we extended?
It was within the last, I believe it was within the last 30 days that we extended it for 120 days to give the timeline in which to bring this in.
So right now, basically, if the timeline, my first question to Mr. Brown, if we're working on something and we're going to see it come to fruition somewhere in March or April, we're really close to that moratorium timeline anyway. Okay. Mr. Pickens, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you
what
for
I was going to say is we have a moratorium now, so it's 120 days, so we have time to work on this. So I think we need to, as Commissioner Turner said, is to push us to the, to legal and to the planning commission, or to the planning department to work on it again and see if there are two separate issues to deal with, and which it sounds like there is, and then definitely the planning commission needs to review this before it comes back to us.
I agree.
And I don't know that it'll be a one-meeting review for them either. So, and then they make the recommendation back to us, but I don't know that we should ban them. But I think we should move forward with this document.
Thank you, Commissioner Pickens. Commissioner Turner.
Yes, I fully agree with Commissioner Pickens. I think we do need to move it forward because a lot of the issues that they're having, I think, can be regulated throughout hours. I've been told that that a lot of the worst issues on site are usually after 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night, and part of this ordinance was to make it to where at 9 o'clock at night you had to close the door. So I don't know if that's what'll end up being at the end or not, but whatever that goes through the planning commission. But there are ways to regulate some of the worst issues here, and as I said earlier, I'm a firm believer that a business that may be undesirable to some is not undesirable to others, and I don't know that we should try to legislate other people's morality. So I think it should move forward and go through the proper motions, let legal do the legal portion, and let building and zoning, they've done most of their work already, and then it go to planning commission. I don't know that if it takes more than one meeting, then it's probably going to have to go to planning commission. We're probably going to have to extend the moratorium another 30 or 60 days. But if I'm not mistaken, Colonel Commando down there basically said that we can probably defend it as long as there's something actively being done at that time. Isn't that kind of what you said, Rich?
Yes, sir.
So if that's the case and we're actively working on it, then then we could move forward. And then, but that's not saying that even after they go through all the motions and everything else, if we don't like the final document, we could still ban it at that time, I believe. So
We can.
we can go through the motions and give it a try and see if they can come up with something that makes everybody good.
Well, let me say this too. The moratorium is a word. They're still trying to pop up all over the place. The Sears building was one the other day out in Interlaken. There was one at the old vet office. We have to be very adamant because they're pulling in with a trailer, trying to set up, take what they can and leave as quick as they can. So we have to be very careful. Commissioner Rawls, you were next, sir. You have the floor.
Just so we're clear, I'm not trying to legislate anybody's morality. I personally don't think that if other counties are having issues with it, it's something we should be jumping into ourselves. I think we really should take a long, hard look at what they've learned and what they've done and why they're in the position they're in, lawsuits aside. But one thing we have not discussed is public input. I think if we're going to do this, we need to have a nighttime town hall meeting sooner than later to let the public come in here and give their input as well. You know, we may have 51% of this community that says, look, we need to have these type of establishments to create jobs and to create income for the county. Or we may have 51% of the people that come in here and say, don't allow this to happen right now. Let's slow the roll. So I think we definitely need to engage our public because as far as I know, there's been no public conversation about this whatsoever.
Well, this is the first meeting, but
Right.
yeah, I'm not opposed to that, Commissioner. Thank you. Commissioner Adamsack?
Again, my only concern as far as us internally doing this is we don't have the resources the state has or the federal government has as a county, which is why you're here before the counties, not before the state or federal government. The other part of it is you said it yourself. You know, that you need people that can do planning and zoning, lawyering, and all this other stuff. Well, our lawyer's a town attorney. He's not a gambling law attorney. And what do you want to expect us to hire a gambling law attorney? You want us to defer to you to work with. You're representing the side that wants to have these businesses here. We're not sure yet whether we want these businesses here, or at least I'm not sure yet. I do like the idea of there being, I'm not against gambling at all. I like the idea of there being a commission that actually has rules and regulations across the board, but I don't think Putnam County is the place for that type of commission.
Thank you, Mr. Adamsack. So what I'm hearing basically is we're going to have the attorneys contact each other and work the legal part out, correct? As the zoning part is still moving down the line. And then this thing will go to the Planning Commission for review, if it takes a few meetings for the Planning Commission, which will give the public some opportunity to speak. Then when it comes back to us, we'll make sure it's an evening meeting where the public has the opportunity to come. And if we don't like the finished product at that time, like Commissioner Turner said, we could put a ban on them or accept the product that's there. Is that what I'm hearing today?
No, sir,
That's not what
I think Mr. Adams.
Okay, Mr. Adamsack?
I guess my question to you is, if this was the final document, the one that you received, would you bring forth litigation?
But you can't ask that question.
Sure, I can ask you, you can choose not to answer it.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's, okay.
That's a fair question.
Yeah, but that's, I mean, okay.
The reason I ask that is because it's my thought, after talking to Mr. Commando as well as some other attorneys out of state who deal with gaming, that the litigation's gonna come either way, unless if we allow him to make the rules. So, that's my feeling. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Turner, you have the
Well,
floor. sir.
somebody could sue you over anything at any
That's
time.
right.
But, we can't live our life worried about that. We need to try to do the right thing as we move forward is what we need to try to do, in my opinion. Mr. Chairman, I think that we're gonna give the public plenty of opportunity to speak on this issue. They're gonna speak on it at least one planning commission, if not more. They're gonna speak on it and all. They can reach out to the commissioners. They can do whatever. I fail to see how we need to take this issue and turn it into a platform that where we all of a sudden move into night meetings. No, sir. That's just a ploy is all that is to try to get us into night meetings. So it's not like that they're gonna have this one time issue and that's all they're gonna get to talk about this. They're gonna get to talk about it at Planning Commission throughout the process. They could talk about it again when it comes before the board next time. If they can't make it and they don't have email and they have a telephone, they can get hold of me, so, or any other commissioner here. So I just resent the fact that every time we turn around that we have to use an issue for a employee to get to a platform that the commission has already voted down multiple times. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Adams, that.
So I apologize, but the pretense to when I was called in to talk to staff about this was if we didn't have this, that there was a potential for litigation. So that's why I was asked to come there, so that's why I bring that up. As far as evening meetings go, I obviously encourage it to be an evening meeting. I think these people would much rather be at an evening meeting than where they could be searching for other work in case this doesn't work out, or they could be working with their kids or doing other things than sitting out here in the audience in the afternoon. Excuse me. I think that's about it.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. That Mr. Rawls.
No ploy. We're having 4 nighttime town hall meetings a year. We've agreed on doing that quarterly. So I don't know why we can't discuss this at a town hall meeting. If nobody brings it up, I'll bring it up, but it'll be discussed at a town hall meeting. There's no ploy here. We're not trying to shove nighttime meetings down anybody's throat here. So just wanted to make sure that's perfectly clear.
Thank you. Mr. Commando, I have a question. When we pass, let's just say that we get to the final spot and there's an ordinance to be passed. We have to do that in the evening anyway, correct? At a 5:05?
Yeah.
Right. Or after, so it could be, okay. So evening to me, 5:05, 6 o'clock, somewhere, it's the same thing for me. Thank you. All right. I guess I need to ask, is there any other public comment before we move on? You got a card, Ashley? Okay. And I will do this, I promise.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap
Thank
it
you.
up. Thank you, Mr. Mathis. Did you get your mask? Okay. Mr. Davis, is that Jerry Davis? Is that? Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. Davis, please come up and state your name and your address for the record.
My name's Jerry Davis. I live in Hollister off Darren Drive. I appreciate you listening to me. Some of you I voted for, some of you I didn't. Irregardless, you work for me. I'm a taxpayer,
Yes,
so you work for me.
Yes,
I don't
That's
work
right.
for you.
we know that.
These game rooms, I've gambled from Las Vegas, New Orleans, Biloxi, Tampa, Jacksonville at the poker rooms, Gainesville, over at St. Augustine rooms. I've never felt uncomfortable in any establishment gambling. The same with the ones here in Putnam County. I've gambled at every one from Palatka to Interlaken. I've always felt safe, secure in them. Especially since the new law they put in, when you go in, you feel like the sheriff over there is putting you in jail. You get scanned and you have to pull the pennies out of your pocket. So nobody's getting in with anything to harm you with. I've never been addressed with any manner that I felt endangered me or uncomfortable with at any of them. It is our choice with our money, whether to take it to Biloxi, to take it to the local bar where when you go in there, all you're going to come out with is a damn headache the next morning. At least at the game rooms, I stand a chance of coming out with more money than I went in with, and I certainly don't do that in any of the liquor stores around town. And I've got good friends that own them. I have a son that was in law enforcement here in Palatka for 15 years, which I'm sure the sheriff knows him, Todd Davis. I have a grandson that was at the law enforcement here, Stephen Reese. They both went to St. Johns County on the sheriff's department over there. So I've talked to them, and they said, Dad, go down there and address these people and tell them what the people, I'm retired. What am I going to do, sit there and watch TV after I cut the yard and trim it up? I don't have a wife. My children are all grown. I've got good children. But I'm not going to go interrupt their family. The game rooms, I've made hundreds of friends there. A lot of times we just sat there and talk. They feed us on Friday and Saturday night, a free meal. Take $5, I can't go to any place here in town, including Bradley's, and I used to own that building and eat for $5. And I don't have to gamble if I don't want to. I've been sitting down there, and they would have drawings, and I've won many hundreds of dollars on the drawings and never gambled a penny.
Mr. Davis, okay, thank you.
Yes, sir, but you work for me. Just give me one more minute.
I do.
Thank you.
I was just asking you to wrap it up, sir. Thank
Okay, I'm fixing to wrap it up
you. We
right
all
now.
know we work for you.
Yes, sir, I understand that. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
So I would ask you, these people that work there, they deserve their jobs. As a senior and as a gambler, I beg y'all, open us back up. Let us have entertainment. It's cheap entertainment compared to going to bars, and I drink at a few bars around town. I can go to the Moose Club and play the machines. I can go to the Vets Club and play the machines, and I can play bingo. Do you know the odds on bingo? If there's 200 tickets sold and you buy one, it's 200 to 1. If there's 400 tickets sold and you buy 4, it's still 200 to 1. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's 100 to 1. Right. So, you know, and y'all letting that go, and you won't let the game rooms go. Thank y'all very much, and I'll still vote for you regardless. Thank you.
I have a question for the gentleman.
Yeah, Mr. Adamsack. Mr. Davis, Mr. Adamsack has a question for you, please, sir. It's okay.
He just stood right there.
No, I wasn't after you. I work for the other
I know, sir.
73,990.
I apologize,
No,
Mr.
sir.
Harvey.
Mr. Davis, I appreciate your input on this.
Sir, I'm very hard of hearing, and I'm 70 years old, so you...
Okay. So you regular these establishments and you enjoy yourself there, right?
Sir?
You regular the establishments, you enjoy it, it's part of
Yes,
your
sir.
entertainment?
I was at the one in town here the other day, the last one to be shut down when the sheriff's department came in, and they were very good gentlemen. I'll give that to you.
Yeah.
Okay?
And when you go into these establishments, you have the expectation that you're gambling your money?
Sir?
You have the expectation that you're participating in gambling, correct?
Terry, tell me what he's saying. I'm hard of hearing.
When you go into the establishment, you're going there to gamble. You feel like you're going there to partake
Yes, sir.
in
Most
gambling.
of the time, a lot of times I go down there just for the food, though, and the drawings. So, and when I go to Biloxi, I gamble. When I make a trip to Tampa, I go to gamble.
So unfortunately, the state has made gambling illegal. So until that's why my point is the state needs to take up creating commission.
You don't consider bingo gambling? You don't consider scratch-offs gambling?
I think there's exceptions for that under law already. So they need to write those laws at the state level to allow for these.
Audience, I called you down one time. We're going to respect each other here.
And my only point is that the establishments are trying to present themselves as non-gambling institutions, and in fact they are. That's my only point. It really has nothing to do with you directly.
Thank you.
Well, sir, it's a gamble when I walk out of this building and go to the red light with my truck.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Appreciate your comment. All right. Sheriff, I'm going to give you your time, sir. Thank you.
Be sure and turn the machine on.
I will say that Mr. Mathis and I have been acquaintances for some time, despite being on opposite sides of an issue. And I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Turner, about undesirable businesses. And I'll tell you from my personal perspective, these businesses are undesirable because of the types and the number of crimes that we see committed at them. But not only are they undesirable, they're also illegal. You know, it's without question, if you go and you consult with the state attorney's office. I want to circle around and touch on a couple of issues that were brought up earlier. Those cases against the operators were dropped. That was by mutual agreement of the sheriff's office and the state attorney's office, because we both equally felt that it wasn't right to hold the operators responsible for the actions of the owners. But the fact of the matter is that through no fault of ours, the owners have been shielded and insulated through smoke and mirrors perpetually over a period of time and not given us access to them. We have put these businesses on notice and delivered them notice after notice that were hand delivered to them personally, that they're operating illegally, that they were in fact gambling. Thank you, Mr. Davis. So the fact of the matter is, we should never find ourselves in a position where we're trying to regulate an illegal business. There's a reason why the state hasn't taken this up. It's because it's illegal. Mr. Mathis referenced sweepstakes that were regulated by the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services. I would challenge each one of the 5 of you tomorrow to call the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services and ask them if they regulate internet casinos. I can tell you what the answer is going to be. Unequivocally, no, they do not and they will not, because they know they're illegal businesses and they don't operate legally. Furthermore, while I appreciate Mr. Mathis coming down out of the goodness of his heart and spending some time here in Putnam County this afternoon, allowing him to pair with Colonel Commando and partner in the drafting of an ordinance to regulate an illegal business is tantamount to releasing the fox into the back door of the hen house. Mr. Mathis referenced several other issues, paying money, game of chance, the Chuck E. Cheese exemption. Those arguments hold no water. The fact of the matter is, jurisdictions all across the state are being challenged, none of which, to my knowledge, have been challenged successfully. Since 2017, we have had a number of crimes committed at these internet casinos, not the least of which was a homicide in San Mateo, multiple robberies, multiple burglaries, and multiple drug offenses. As sheriff, it's not my role or responsibility, nor is it any of yours, to decide which undesirable businesses we want here, but it is my responsibility to decide if one is operating illegally and to take action against them. As I told you previously, I'm opposed to any sort of a regulation that would regulate a presumably illegal business. But in the absence of an outright ban, I can support an ordinance that regulates legal businesses that operate legally within the confines of Florida statutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Adamzak, you have a question for the Sheriff?
No, I just have a statement. I appreciate your sentiment, and I agree that I don't think our sheriff's department needs to be using cycles, especially in the budgetary constraints that we have in this county, pursuing things at establishments that may not be legal from a state perspective and enforcing state law that allows them, that declares them illegal, and pursuing that in investigations, because that takes more time than just a black and white traffic offense or a murder that you know that happened. Where this, we're trying to read between gray areas where, just like the gentleman from representing the businesses said, it takes 3 different areas to figure it out. It's complicated and convoluted. There's a reason for that. The reason why they present a convoluted statement is because they want us to make it legal in this perspective in our county. And that's all this ordinance does, is it gives us a false, basically, face to something that shouldn't be here, in my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Mr. Rawls?
So, you know, when Mr. Davis said that he was attending these to gamble, it immediately struck me as this guy, I kind of whispered to Mr. Pickens, this guy just said publicly that he's gambling. That is illegal. There's no doubt about it. Florida doesn't allow gambling like that at this time. I don't have a problem allowing gambling in Putnam County if it was allowed by state statute, but it's not. I don't know that this is something that we need to bring in our backyard right now. You referenced multiple crimes, different types of crimes. I guess what I would like to know is, historically, looking at the counties that surround us, what are they doing with their ordinances right now?
That's a good question. I can only reference St. Johns County because that's the one that I'm most familiar with. They have an outright ban on these internet casinos, to my knowledge.
So Alachua, Marion, Flagler.
I believe Alachua has a ban as well. Rich, you may know better than I do, but.
I'm only aware of 3 counties that have a ban, which are Nassau, Jacksonville, and Seminole. I don't. The city, mate. I'm just talking counties.
Okay, and those excuse me, are those bans, they're being challenged, you're saying? They've not been successfully challenged?
Well, it's my understanding from some of Mr. Mathis's comments that he made earlier that there's some pending legal challenges.
If we stuck with this ordinance, is there a way, part of the requirement is to have a security person. I'm not sure how that sets well with me. Is it possible to have a requirement in the ordinance, or Mr. Commander, you might have to answer this, that would require the person to be a LEO or at least certified LEO, whether they're working for a local agency or not?
Well, I'll tell you candidly, from where I'm standing, I can answer that question. I'm not going to allow one of my employees to go and seek off-duty employment at an establishment that we've established as operating illegally or participating in illegal gambling.
But if, you know, according to Mr. Kelly, there's a way to make these legal. The machines will be legal. They're not going to do anything. He said himself, he's not aware of any of his people that do anything illegal. So,
I wouldn't expect him to tell you if there was.
Right. So would it not bear fruit to put somebody there that has law enforcement background that can be there to make sure that the folks that are attending these places and enjoying their time there are doing it legally?
Based on the complexity of these machines, it would be nearly impossible for us to train every single deputy that was going to work at one of these internet casinos, illegal gambling houses, whatever you want to call them, to understand all the complexities of the gambling laws and how the software works. In a number of these games, the operators actually have the ability to go and adjust the odds on the fly. If a table is paying out too much to a particular patron, they can dial that back, and then when someone else sits down, they can turn it right back up. That's what's partially problematic with these operations and how they don't fit within the statutory framework of Florida's gambling laws.
Has that been addressed at all, Mr. Commando?
I'm sorry, ask your question another way.
Being able to modify the machines at the whim of the, I mean, we're getting into brass tacks, and now what we're discussing is gambling. People are going in there, they're putting down their money, they're expecting to leave with more money. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. If the operator has the ability to turn, increase or decrease the winnings for an individual or individuals that are, you said table, is this, are these electronic games or?
They're electronic games, and you know, yes, you're right. There is the ability to turn these odds up and down, but you know what we're talking about doing is putting lipstick on a pig, and at the end of the day, it's still a pig and it still stinks.
But going back to if we were stuck with this, I'm in favor of a ban, but if we're stuck with this ordinance, who controls the turning up and down? Is that done from a remote location, or is it done from within the establishment?
My knowledge is it's either done remotely or from within the confines of the establishment. I think it depends on how each of these locations is individually configured.
So if we had it in our ordinance that if these machines are found to be present in the establishment, that we could then ban that business from being in business. Is that possible, Mr. Commando?
I don't know. I mean, the whole concept with the internet gaming is that they connect through the internet to some other computer.
But if somebody was to go in and prove that this one establishment, they had a type of machine that could be manipulated by an off-site operator or on-site operator to modify the averages of people playing it.
Well, I think at that point, then it's gambling and the sheriff can arrest them. I mean, at that point.
And we have been.
The problem is from what I understand, part of your problem is that this doesn't rise to the occasion of a misdemeanor, and the folks that are getting detained are the people that are working, not the owners.
Sure.
So it doesn't accomplish anything at that point.
Well, it has accomplished something because it shut everyone down in the county that was operating illegally previously.
But can they go right back into business, or are they shut down forever?
That's a situation that they would have to take up with their legal counsel. My advice to them is buyer beware, and if you open back up and you're operating illegally, you do so at your own peril.
And I just looked up, St. Johns County has banned it, but St. Augustine allows it to be legal, so.
That's pretty much what we have going on right now. We're in a moratorium in the county, but the cities can do what they want within the county.
Okay, Mr. Turner?
I think Mr. Adamsack was next.
Well, I think the numbers got me.
Okay, that's fine.
I saw you
I'll
up
be
there.
happy to go next. I just don't want to break in line. Sheriff, do you feel like, I understand that you're emphatically wanting to ban them, I get it, but most of the issues that you had have come late at night or early in the wee hours of the morning, haven't they? Not all, but as the majority of them have.
I would say the majority of them have,
And
yes.
so, you know, if they got a machine that's deemed legal by that was deemed legal, and we could put a tag on after inspection. And I don't know what's legal and what isn't. I mean, I'm sure there's some kind of game that's legal in the world, you know, if they use that game. And they put that in the ordinance, and we tried to do what this one actually says, which is, make them close at 9 or 10 or a night or something like that. And so they're not going until 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, or what have you. And if they are, then that's deemed a violation, 3 violations, and you're out, you're closed, and you're done. And you got to come into full compliance.
Sure.
You know, at that point.
Here's the biggest issue that I see with that is, regardless of whoever the entity is that certifies these machines, if it's a county employee or someone with, you know, whatever regulatory authority, they're basically putting their seal of approval on there under color of law that they're certifying that these machines operate legally. Then if someone goes in and is able to make a criminal case against them, then they potentially incur some criminal liability there as well, which is problematic in my opinion. You know, that to be candid with you, I think the legislature has been derelict in their duty to us to take this issue up and to regulate this industry however is appropriate. And that's what's got us in this quandary that we're in now. Make no mistake about it, I have no issue with gambling. I've been to Vegas myself and put money in slot machines and played at tables, and I'm not adverse to that at all. What I am adverse to is the criminal element and the undesirables that these places draw in from outside of Putnam County.
Mr. Chairman, my last comment would be, could we consider perhaps tabling this issue until the first meeting or workshop in January, and Rich, and part of that would be with Rich, would that mean that during our moratorium we're not working on it? I'm not really prepared to make this decision today. I mean, I thought I was when I came in. I thought that I was willing to try to go move forward with the ordinance and take what Mr. Salmons wrote, because I thought it was very good, and try to move us forward. I thought most of the issues had certainly been addressed. A few of the issues even addressed further, you know, as far as opening new ones and what have you. And as far as the old ones, I think they ought to be able to operate under a grandfather ordinance as long as they're operating legally. I mean, I want to make that part of that statement. So I don't know that I wouldn't like to have a little more time to just do a little more research on this now that we've had these discussions, and maybe talk to some more citizens about it. And, you know, and I'm sure that in any room you'd have every opinion on earth in any room that you walked in. So I don't know. I'd just like to have a little more time if the commission agrees.
I agree.
Mr. Adamczak, you have your,
Yeah. Mr. Commando, was there an ordinance prior? I thought this is the first time there's going to be an ordinance. So, I mean, they were never operating under an ordinance. They were operating under the fact they showed up. That's how I was explained to me. The establishments that are here, you're saying grandfather into an ordinance. Do we have an ordinance today that allows them, or was it just that my understanding was they opened business and then found out later that they weren't wanted by law?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Does that make sense?
It does. The term grandfathered is, the legal term is vested rights, meaning that unless there's some regulation that restricts them, they're legally allowed to operate. So they operate under vested rights. And our ordinance actually addresses that.
Right, the new ordinance. So the vested rights would align with the state, which deems gambling operations illegal prior to this.
Correct. Our proposed ordinance only looks to regulate legal activities. We're not looking to regulate illegal activities.
correct.
So Gator, you were recently elected to your office, correct?
Yes.
You swore on the Bible to uphold the Constitution of the state of Florida, correct?
Well, I did January 3rd of 2017, and I will again January 5th of 2021.
Sir. Do you feel that that includes enforcing all laws of the state of Florida?
Absolutely.
Do you feel that's what
And
you're
those
doing?
that I might not agree with.
Now, I apologize, this comes across as grilling, but do you feel that you're enforcing those laws when you close down these establishments?
I absolutely do.
Thank you. I have full faith in what you do from what I've observed in my 5 years in this county, and I am fully supportive of this action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Turner? And I have a few comments.
Well, I fully support the sheriff also, but I don't think the sheriff has shut squat down. What he did was went and enforced the law. They had the opportunity the next morning to turn that business back on if they could do it in a legal fashion. And I think that that does not need to be lost in this meeting today. He hasn't shut anybody down. He has enforced the law, and that means that the county didn't shut them down. The sheriff didn't shut them down. They went and turned them off that night because they were operating illegally in the opinion of the sheriff's department. But it's my understanding, and speak up, Gator, you know, that's fine. They could have opened the next morning if they could have opened the door back up in a legal manner that met the current law and the current ordinances. They couldn't do it. That's why they're shut down, because they can't meet the current criteria.
And in support of that, I would offer to anyone who operates an internet casino that if they had been shut down or arrested by us, they could have opened back up 30 seconds or 5 minutes later or the following morning. But the fact of the matter is, in my opinion, they felt like they were in a precarious situation where they knew they were operating or potentially operating illegally, and out of an abundance of caution chose not to open back up because they knew these activities were illegal.
Okay. Sheriff, I have a couple of questions.
I have one.
I know
Sorry.
you do, but that's the chair sits here and writes everything down, doesn't get an opportunity. So, Sheriff, I agree. I don't want to regulate an illegal business, period. End of story. That's not even something I want to entertain. You mentioned the fox in the hen house and why would we ask Mr. Mathis to sit down with our attorney? I think Mr. Adamczak said it, that he's not, I don't know if he's skilled in that area. He can't be skilled in everything, but who else would he go to then? Where else would you send our attorney to write an ordinance if that's the way this board is going to go? I think that he should entertain Mr. Mathis. I think he should entertain your attorney. I think he should entertain as many attorneys as he can find to bring us back something if this board chooses to go forward with that. Tell me what you would think.
Sure. Well, I can tell you that if these games are in fact sweepstakes, as Mr. Mathis claims that they are, I would recommend reaching out to the Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, who regulates those, and reach out to their legal counsel and get their opinion on this particular ordinance. But again, in my opinion, these businesses are operating casino-style games, slot machines, that there is no element of skill, only chance, and they pay out in cash.
Right.
And therefore, they're gambling illegally according to the laws of the state of Florida.
Thank you, Sheriff. Mr. Adamczak?
Mr. Turner, I appreciate your comments. I think you said it better than I could have. Those businesses had a choice to open the next day. They chose not to. And that is a better way of saying it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Pickens.
Yeah, so the way you just described that is gambling, which is illegal, correct?
That's correct.
Now, in your opinion, as Commissioner Turner says, that these businesses had the opportunity to open 1 hour later or whatever, you think they're not doing that because you can't get to the owners to discuss that or what needs to be done? Is there a conversation with this, or they know they're operating illegally, and what are they going to wait for? I mean, if they're closed, they're closed. They don't have any revenue coming in.
I couldn't even begin to speculate why they haven't opened back up.
All right, order now. We're not going to do that.
Okay, that's it.
Mr. Rawls, you had your light on. We're going to wrap this up.
You know, what really sticks with me and is rubbing me raw right now is the fact that we're having a conversation about potentially allowing what we know to be illegal in the state of Florida to operate in our county. So I'm glad that we're going to take the time to look in this deeper. Admittedly, this is gambling. We know that it cannot be done legally in Florida unless we allow it somehow. I don't even know if do we have the authority to allow gambling in Putnam County? Okay.
What we're trying to do.
No, I understand your frustration, I don't understand why the business didn't open the other day. That part still is confusing to me. I hope the folks in the audience that work for these establishments realize that if you're working in a place that's operating illegally, you've done that under your own your own circumstances. You've created the problem that you're complaining about, because what we're being told by the sheriff is that y'all could have opened up immediately after the arrests were made, and whatever was worked out with whoever the next day with the charges being dropped, did the charges have to be dropped? Or could
No.
you have moved forward with them?
No,
So
not
you
at
did
all.
them a favor. So I really hope that nobody leaves here today thinking that somehow we're the bad guys here. I'm not speaking for the sheriff's department, but this dais and everybody up here, we're not the ones who created this problem, but we are the ones that can solve it. And it needs to be done in a very slow, methodical, and diligent manner so we don't make mistakes. I'm sitting here reading through both of these as this talk is going on, and I see a lot of issues with the way the ordinance is written. But I can tell you right now that if it's going to involve some sort of trickery where we bring a machine in, it passes inspection, and then then it gets manipulated, that's not going to sit well with me whatsoever. And I want to see whatever we do, if it's not a full-on ban, then it's got to have some really sharp teeth in it.
Commissioner Turner.
Yes, sir. I think we need to try to move this forward and decide what we're gonna do, Mr. Chairman. I think we could discuss these issues back and forth for 3 days and still not get any further than where we are at the moment. I think that we need to try to move this forward and either decide are we moving it forward, or if we're not, or if we're gonna table it till January, which gives a little more time now that we know the issues. But even if we decide to table the issue, if we could make the decision, there's no sense in sending this to the planning commission or staff working on it or laboring on it any longer if we're gonna ban it. So I think that decision needs to be made today. Either we're gonna ban it or not, and then we could table our portion that till after, or just tell them to go take it on the planning commission and do what they need to do. Cause there's just no sense in this county wasting any more money on it if we're just gonna ban it.
Can we put a temporary ban on it? Can we ban it and then?
We've got a moratorium on it.
No, I'm saying though, if we go ahead and put a ban in place,
Well,
then
hang
we
on.
can take a look at some.
Mr. Chairman, I don't think he has the floor.
No, Mr. Adamsack will have the floor. Mr. Adamsack?
In the spirit. And what you're asking for, Mr. Turner, I make a motion that we ban internet gaming.
Mr. Adamsack, would you mind if Mr. Rawls finishes his comment before you
I
make
think
a
we'll let public comment, he can have comment during the discourse,
Fine.
right? I make a motion that we ban internet cafes until such time that the state of Florida provides regulations for the operation of internet cafes.
I'll second that.
We have a proper motion on the floor by Mr. Adamsack, a second by Commissioner Rawls. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, perhaps if the motion could be to direct staff to draft an ordinance, because you would need public comment on that issue, because that's not.
I can't hear you, Rich. You're gonna have to speak into your microphone.
Yeah.
If you could direct, if that motion would be to direct staff to prepare an ordinance to that effect, not banning it today, because you would still need public comment, because that's, first off, you're in a workshop, second off, that's not what was on the agenda today.
So I'll pull back the prior motion.
Mr. Rawls, will you pull back?
Hold a second.
Okay, Mr. Adamsack.
I make a motion for staff to draft an ordinance banning the operation of internet cafes in the county of Putnam and the state of Florida until such time that the Florida state legislator creates, this is a worse wording than my first one, creates ordinances and or laws commissioning the operation of gambling facilities in the state of Florida.
Second.
Okay, we have proper motion by Commissioner Adamsack, proper second by Commissioner Rawls. Any further discussion?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Pickens, you're first.
Okay, when you say gambling facilities, don't we already have some gambling facilities that are already regulated? So I think you would be looking for gambling regulations on this type of gambling, is
Yeah,
that
internet
correct? And
cafe.
I've never been in one of these, don't want to go in one.
I haven't either. I thought about going
So I
in
don't
one,
know
but
what
they were all
goes
not
on in
open.
there, but it sounds like some illegal activity has gone on in here, and maybe not.
Yeah.
So I'm a little unclear on,
Rich, can I edit the motion? Or how does that work? Or we got pulled back?
and let me,
To replace gambling with internet cafes.
And it sounds like, you know,
You can amend your motion and then ask for the second to amend as well.
Sir, go ahead. As it does, as we've talked here for over an hour, it looks like we need some regulation from the state with this, and it's long overdue, is what it sounds like. So, anyway, go ahead and do your motion, and I have some questions on when you get done with that motion.
Mr. Turner?
Yes, sir, under discussion, Mr. Chairman, I'm not for banning them today or starting an ordinance to ban them, because I think of the cost of legal challenges. And as I said earlier, I do think it's an undesirable business. I'm not for internet cafes any more than I'm for adult stores. But I think they should have the opportunity to do business, especially if they're currently doing business. We just need to regulate them in such a way that makes them a more desirable business if possible. So, you know, I guess I'm not gonna be able to vote for the ban to move this forward as a ban. I'm just not prepared to do that today. I think that, I was hoping that if we were gonna go that route, we could possibly table it a little bit. I feel like that there is a way to take, and I think that Mr. Salmons is real close to it, to figuring out a way to make this to where it's not as a risky a business, a dangerous business, and if they don't get there, you're gonna shut them down again for the day. I'm not saying you're gonna shut them down, but shut them down. You're gonna go in there and arrest somebody or give them a citation or do something because you feel like that's what you need to do if they're operating illegally. So I don't know. I have a very difficult, I have a lot of difficulty in just absolutely just banning anything because we think it's undesirable if they can get there legally. That's the key, if they can get there legally. And do you, in your opinion, Gator, do you think that there is a possibility for them to use a certain kind of machine or whatever to get there legally?
I honestly don't know. You know, under the Chuck E. Cheese exemption, if they claim they were operating under that, why are they not giving out pencil erasers and plastic slinkies and stuffed animals? You know, I just have a difficult time wrapping my head around the fact that we're having a conversation about banning an illegal activity. We might as well write an ordinance that allows the sale of cocaine.
But I think I still had the floor, Mr. Chairman. So, but that's not what I'm talking about at all, Sheriff. Number one, illegal activity shouldn't even be what we're discussing at all. That's why I'm asking, can one of these internet businesses become legal? Because I understand you're hell on wheels on them, and other sheriffs are around the state, but there's some areas that aren't so rough on them that let them work, you know, and we've got 3 counties and several other municipalities that have outlawed them, and all that's gonna happen is we're gonna shut down the business owners in the county, and they're gonna just go to the city, because it's my understanding they're wanting to expand the business in the city. So basically it depends on which side of the line you live on. Do you get to make a living as an internet cafe owner, or do you go to the city and try to put in one there? So I'm not questioning your judgment at all, but it seems to me like if they're legal in the city, why can't they figure out a way that they're legal in the county?
Well, I think the ordinance, what's maybe lost on the discussion here is the ordinance focuses on regulation of legal activities, legal internet cafes. In my opinion, I don't know that there is or ever has been such a thing. And regardless of whether they're operating in the city or the county, I can tell you that from where I'm standing, we're going to continue to take enforcement action against them if they're operating illegally.
Even in the city?
Even in the city limits.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Mr. Adams, you have the floor.
I guess we wanted to amend the motion per Mr. Pickens' ask.
Mr. Rawls had a comment, though. And Mr. Rawls, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess, yeah. You know, this is a very frustrating conversation, and we could sit here, just like Commissioner Turner said, and go all night long. What this comes down to is we're discussing an illegal activity. You made a very good point when you said, you know, we should be discussing the legality of selling cocaine. The state of Florida doesn't give us the ability to be able to violate state laws, correct?
That's absolutely correct.
I just don't see right now how we have any other way around it. I read the original draft. By the way, guys, I don't see anything different in here except maybe one or two typos. I don't really see any significant difference, so maybe we did receive the second draft. I'm only through page 13 of it, but it looks identical. You know, the reason that I would support the ban is very simple. Someone came in here today and told the truth. And that is that we have gambling, whether it starts at 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock at night, it's gambling. And that's what we need to ban in Putnam County right now, until the state takes this up as an issue and declares that it's legal. And at that point, I think we should stop the ban and allow these businesses to open up legally.
Thank you, Mr. Rawls. I want to ask a question to the board. It seems like we're posed at two questions. I'm sorry. Sorry, Jacob, don't get mad at me. Seems like we're posed at two questions, where we're going to go ahead with a ban or go ahead with an ordinance. I kind of like what Commissioner Turner wants to do, is table this until January. Rich, what would be, the question I'm going to ask you is, what would be the problem of coming back with both an ordinance to ban in January and an ordinance to move forward with and give you time to work it out? What would be the problem with that?
To run on parallel tracks, to draft an ordinance to ban is not overly complicated. I mean, there are two different schools of thought on which way you're moving forward. I think if your intent is to solicit public comment, to dig a little deeper into the proposed ordinance, to look at the counties that are banning, I would characterize that as continued active work on coming to a resolution. So I don't believe that would violate the conditions of a moratorium. And I think there's still a way that we could either put an ordinance into effect or outright ban them within the 120 days that we're still looking at.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, you have the floor.
I think the next decision that needs to be made, Mr. Chairman, is that if we do decide to table or move it forward or do whatever, then I would like to send that to, are we going to go on and send it to the Planning Commission? This ordinance should not be before us today. I'm just telling you. It shouldn't have ever come before us except for one direction and one direction only, and that's, do we ban them or do we try to write an ordinance and land use through land use and send that to the Planning Commission? That should have been the issue. The last hour, we just wasted time talking about it. That should be the issue before us, because if it goes that direction, then it needs to go through the motions that are established. It needs to go to the Planning Commission, get their input, recommendations, and then come back to the board with that. And this should have been done at that point on this ordinance, or if the board votes to move it to the direction of banning, then the motion should state that the board wants staff to prepare a motion to ban and it be voted on. But would that motion need to go through the Planning Commission? Yes, so it's got to go through, either direction's got to go to the Planning Commission before it comes back to us. Either an ordinance to ban or an ordinance to not ban. Both directions have to go to the Planning Commission. So then we would do it after their recommendation. So that's my comments, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate those comments. Mr. Adams-Act?
So we still have a motion on the floor, I think.
We do.
I'm willing to withdraw that motion if Mr. Rawls is willing to.
I will, but I'll say this, what's unsettling to me is we're sitting here discussing potentially violating the law. Mr. Commando, if we were to push through an ordinance at some point, and we know that these establishments allow gambling, are we party to that?
No, because you're not, presuming you do pass a regulation, you wouldn't be passing a regulation that authorizes illegal activity. As you all have correctly said, we don't have that authority.
But we know ahead of time going into it.
Well, you know, I mean, that you could use a similar analogy to say that just because there are what used to be called the head shops, I mean, they sold different things, and whether or not they were paraphernalia or not, I mean, that's a question for law enforcement. But whether or not we collected a business tax receipt on it or something of that nature doesn't mean that you're party to, when the owner makes a decision to do something illegal, that's what the crime is.
So you withdrew your motion and you withdrew your second, so we're right back to square one. So either way, the ordinance would have to go back to the planning commission anyway. So I'm.
Just gotta choose which one. They need direction, Mr.
Well, we've got to finish this up.
They need direction.
This isn't finished.
What's the will of the board?
Sorry, my light was on.
I know, I see it.
There is a legal internet cafe, and that's an internet cafe that sells access to the internet exclusively, and the person logs onto a dumb terminal and does what they like with that time that they have on that terminal. So you can pay a fee of $15 for an hour of access to a terminal. The problem with these internet cafes is they direct you to a specific thing, a specific item, and you don't have free roam of the internet. You're directed to a game. So I absolutely support an internet cafe that allows you unfettered access to the internet as a whole, and you choose to go to websites that have nothing to do with the operator. And that's what a true internet gaming site is. That's what we developed internet gaming sites for in the past. That's what they're designed for. They have morphed into something else in the last 15 years.
Okay, Mr. Turner, thank you, Mr. Adams. I know.
I think with the comments that Mr. Commando just made, that we're not trying to regulate illegal businesses. We're trying to make businesses that are legal operate legally. And so, because right now, that's what good point you just came up with, Commissioner Adams-Ack, was that there are such thing as internet cafes that sell coffee and water and drinks and, I mean, soda pop drinks and sell access to the internet. I don't think so much around here as in other cities, but there's still an internet cafe. So I don't know that I wouldn't prefer, if we had to move them forward, wherever it goes, it's got to go from here to Planning Commission. But we need to give the direction on which one we want it to go in, I think. And so, you know, personally, I'd like to move to try to figure out a way to regulate the legal internet businesses. That's it.
All right. We've got to bring this in for a landing, gentlemen. So Commissioner Turner would like to regulate the legal side, and either way, that's going to the Planning Commission. So what's the will of the board?
Died for lack of a second, sounded to me like.
Was no motion, I don't think.
Well, I moved, yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't hear that as a motion.
I didn't hear that as a motion.
We send it to the Planning Commission to try to regulate the legal side of this business.
Okay, so your motion is to send an ordinance that staff would create to the Planning Commission to regulate the legal side of internet cafes. Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
Okay, we have a second for discussion. All right. Mr. Pickens, you have the floor, sir.
Okay, I think that was one of the two options that we had when we started over an hour ago, right? So how will you take this to the planning commission? What's going to happen to this before it goes to the planning commission?
Sure, can we? Never mind, I think he went that way.
We will take the framework that we have. There may be some massaging based on some of the comments we heard today, that staff heard. And then it will follow the process of, like any other amendment to the Land Development Code. We would do the advertisement and then take it to the Planning Commission with a staff recommendation. There'll be a public comment period at that hearing, and they will vote for a recommendation. They may change it, may keep it the same, but they will vote a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for their action, and any amendment to the Land Development Code requires 2 hearings before adoption in front of you guys, or in front of the commission. So that's, in essence, the process. Is that what you were getting at, Commissioner?
Pretty much. And then, Rich, where will your part be as far as, will you seek any outside counsel to help, to finish this product before it goes to them, or where would you be on this?
I would try to recommend some additional changes. Candidly, I hadn't done it up to this point because I wanted to know what the will of the commission was. I mean, I didn't want to spend a whole lot of time on something if it was going to end up in a ban. But, I mean, our office has some pretty good resources. Mr. Mathis is a well-respected resource. I think there's a variety of different people that I would reach out to try to make sure that we get something that's best for the citizens of the county.
Okay, then this would go to the planning commission for either approval or to be denied, correct?
Yeah. What was the question again?
If it goes before it would go before the planning commission.
Right.
Where are we if they deny this?
It will go to the Planning Commission.
It would still just come back to us with their disapproval,
Yeah,
right?
once they will make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners. So they will take a vote of action, and whatever a majority of them say is what we will provide that to you. You will see also, like with any rezone or land development regulation, you will see the staff original recommendation and proposal, and then that they get, and then any changes that they make will be presented to you for your consideration.
Okay, that's all I got right now.
Commissioner Pickens, just before,
Mr. Adams,
can I just,
Yes.
want to add one other thing. When you asked who I'd reach out to, I'd want heavy input from the sheriff's office. I mean, they have been helping us, and I understand the sheriff's position, but that doesn't, I don't want to give the wrong impression. It doesn't mean they've checked out. They have been very good about providing feedback to us on kind of what's appropriate in the context of what you're discussing.
Thank you. Mr. Adams,
So by legal internet cafe, I guess, do we have a definition of what we're thinking that is? Is that the access to a terminal that can access anything on the website? Nothing specific to that
Are you
venue?
asking that of me?
Well,
I made the motion.
Yeah, because you made the
Can
motion.
I add,
yes, you
Mr.
may,
Chairman?
sir.
I think that we need to leave it up to the planning commission and the legal department to come up with a legal definition they feel like is gonna hold up of what makes a legal gambling or a legal internet cafe business.
Okay.
As part of the issue.
Mr. Rawls.
So what we're proposing to do is send this last draft to the planning board? Or are we going to look at this again before we send them this?
Are you asking me?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
you may
If
answer.
I may, Mr. Chairman, then, my proposal would be to use this as rough framework, to send this to Rich and let him work on it for real, and now that he has clear direction that we want to, and then it go to the planning commission, let them work on it for real, and then bring a recommendation back to us. If that recommendation is to deny the whole thing, so be it. If it's to pass it with these changes, so be it. But then at that time, it'll come back to this board to make a decision on either to pass the ordinance, and it'll be in the current framework, already have gone through the planning process. So everybody would have had their due diligence, and they would have had their input, and they would have had the ability for it to go either way.
Are you done, Mr. Ross?
Do you have enough to go on after today,
Yes, sir, I do.
as far as direction from the board?
Mr. Adams?
I took it off.
Okay,
That
I'm
answered my
sorry.
question.
Hey, so we have a,
I still have a question. What we were given today, compared to what's in the book, looks identical. Is there any significant difference that you can tell us? Like, I mean, I'm on the second last page, and
I mean,
Haven't found
we
anything.
changed some of the wording as it related to the existing.
but I mean,
Cafe.
what I read this over the weekend looks the same as what I'm reading now.
It's,
There's a few.
there's some minor changes to it. We made some minor changes, staff did, from what you read over the weekend. And, you know, an example, I know that we changed some of the wording as it related to how we will treat some of the existing, or all of the existing ones.
I'm at that point right now, existing.
Yeah, that's in the new one. So,
Okay.
and there were some other minor changes throughout.
all right, we have a proper motion on the floor and a proper second. I'm going to call the vote. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. The ayes have it. This carries 3. Thank you very much. Thank you, audience, for being patient and respectful. We greatly appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, I respectfully request a 5-minute.
5-minute recess.
For a potty
We're going to reconvene our meeting of the Putnam County Commission Workshop on December 8th. Time is 5:11. Next topic is item C, Planning and Development Services Sound Ordinance. People, we're in a meeting right now for discussion of sound ordinance. If you want to talk about sound, you're in the right place. If you want to talk about something else, you're in the wrong place. Thank you. Mr. Sammons, you have the floor, sir.
The amendment to the sound ordinance is a
And may
very
I
simple
say,
one.
let's move this along today.
We will.
Thank you.
The essential part of it is that the Sheriff's Department has found that the 15 minutes that we required when we adopted the initial ordinance is too long for officers. They have to stay there to measure sound, and 5 minutes they felt was adequate to do so.
I agree.
And that's the basic change in it. They also asked for the ambient sound criteria to be taken off because it's confusing to everybody. So those are the two changes, basically.
Is everything okay in the hallway? Okay, laughing, not crying? Okay, good. Okay, so you're proposing to move from 15 minutes down to a 5-minute
Measuring.
actual sound that can be verified
Correct.
at that point?
Yep.
I get calls today about the cars going over with too loud, but unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about that.
Nope.
But, okay, so let's see, Commissioner Turner, you were first?
Yes, sir. I move that we move this item forward.
Okay, Commissioner Adams, I'll second that. Commissioner, we got a proper motion on the floor from Mr. Turner to move this forward at staff recommendation, a proper second by Commissioner Adams. Any further discussion? Is that you, Commissioner Adams? Yes, sir. Thank you.
I just want to thank staff for both of these ordinances, the time that you took on both of them. It's very much appreciated by me. Whether I disagree with them or agree with them or not, your efforts are valiant. Thank you.
Well, we create ordinances that we hope that deal with what you want to ultimately have. It's not personal from us, so any changes you make, it doesn't hurt our feelings at all, so.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair,
Mr. Pickens.
I'm sorry, I would just be remiss without thanking Mr. Sharp, who helped do some legal research on what was legally defensible in the time period.
Duly noted. Thank you. Mr. Pickens.
That was just going to be my comment. The Sheriff's Department and legal, for the Sheriff's Department's okay with this, with these changes?
They asked us to do it.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Please.
I think it's going to be very helpful.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second to follow staff recommendations on this sound ordinance. Any further discussion on this matter? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. We move on to item D. Administration, renaming the 1F building, the Honorable Tim Smith Building, and Honorable the Clerk of the Court, Tim Smith. Mr. Turner.
I have one question. Did you find any reason why we couldn't do this, Rich?
No, sir.
It would be my honor to move that we name this building after Mr. Tim Smith.
So we have a proper motion by Commissioner Turner,
Second.
second by Commissioner Rawls. I think we'd all love to make that motion,
Yes.
frankly.
All right.
My privilege.
Okay. Any further discussion on this matter? Hearing
I
none.
just have a comment.
Oh.
I truly do believe that it is appropriate for Commissioner Turner to make that motion, you know, with the relationship that he's had. We've all had great relationship with Tim Smith, but probably no longer than Commissioner Turner, and that's probably one reason because of his age, but anyway, so I appreciate you making that motion.
Because your age. Little levity never hurts anything. does
Exactly.
it? Correct. All right, so, any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. The ayes have it, it's unanimous. We move forward. Yes, I agree. I'm gonna move a little bit. County Attorney, a comment?
None tonight, thank you.
Okay, County Administrator, comment?
Yes, sir, I have a few.
Few? You have
Just
one.
teasing,
You're a lot-
but Nick, I said it would take about 2 minutes. I was wrong. It took about 15 seconds on that resolution for Tim. So, no, Mr. Chairman, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner request, Mr. Rawls?
I have none.
Mr. Pickens?
I have none.
Mr. Adams? None. Mr. Turner?
I have no additional, thank you.
Okay, I have one. I would like for you to look at your calendars for January 19th at 9 o'clock, where we can do the Commissioner Priority Workshop. The one we talked about the other day, you bring your priorities. Other than that, I have no more further comments. This meeting is adjourned.
Hang on, I got a question about that. We're just, you just want us to give you a list, that's it? Okay.
We're going to talk about your list. This meeting's adjourned.
Or do we give the list ahead of time?